Hello, everybody. Welcome to the pre-show of the 220-1002 A-plus study group. It's the Core 2 A-plus study group today, coming to you live from the world headquarters here at Messer Studios. This is the extent of the world headquarters. Everything that I see here, I can pretty much touch everything that makes up Messer Studios. We've got all Q&A, Core 2. 220-1002 Q&A coming up. Hello, chat room. Let's pop out the chat. Pop out the chat. Pop out the chat. Now let's go to the left. Go to the right. And this should be on the left. There we go. Okay, that looks good. We're recording down here. That's good. We're recording up here. The OBS, that's good. Cameras look all right. And Pastor Core 2 yesterday, congratulations. So good. Now you're here for more. You can't get away from it. You passed your Core 2. You're here for the CEUs at this point, I suppose. That's how it works. We've got lots of folks in the chat room from D.C. and Virginia Beach and Louisiana and Western Kentucky. St. Vincent, hello. There's a bunch of Q&A I've got ready to go here. And then in the second hour, I'll open up the phone lines. You're welcome to call in there as well. Catman passed Core 1 last week. Congrats. Taking Core 2 tomorrow. That's a pretty quick turnaround from taking the first one to taking the second one. That's really something. I should do a tour of the studio and the setup we have here because there's a lot of interesting things here. Some we've been using for so long that I don't even think the equipment is for sale anymore, but it just works so darn well. Like I haven't updated my lights in forever. Haven't updated. Some of the audio equipment is relatively old, but it just runs like a champ, and it sounds so good. So that's sort of how it goes. Okay, how can I adjust this? Get a few things adjusted here. We'll figure it out. Zane passed your Core 1 yesterday, 796 out of 900. That's a good score. Anything over the minimum is a good score. Obviously, the score is not something they keep around. You either pass or you don't. So technically, you studied too much. Your score was too good. You shouldn't have studied that much. That's not how it works, everybody. Oh, okay. So this is our second study group of the week. Normally, we do an A-plus Core 1 and Core 2 both in the same week. That's not unusual. Next week, though, we're doing Network Plus and Security Plus in the same week. So that's unusual. That we don't commonly do. So I've got a lot of content to make before that because I haven't even started on it yet. So out of the question in the chat room, so the question is, so how many questions do you need to get correct out of 90? We don't know. Well, first, you may not get 90 questions. It's a maximum of 90 that you might get. So you might get fewer than 90 questions. And each question is worth a different number of points. So you can't count the number of questions that you need to get correct. You have to get the number of points for the questions to pass. So it could be variable depending on what exam you get and what questions you get. So that's kind of it. That's kind of what's going on with that. Pastor A+, that was Leo Sam, Pastor A+. Next is Network Plus and Security Plus. That's a good combo. Those are good certs to have. So I think that's really good. Vintage Computer Services. Course notes, my course notes from Security Plus took you all the way to CySa Plus. I think that CySa is kind of catching on finally. I think a lot of people are finally learning about and taking that one. I keep going back and forth on whether I want to do a CySa course or not. It's a challenge. So I have to figure that one out. Michael, taking your Core 2 in about 3 hours. Well, this will be your last overview. So we'll see how this goes. We've got about 5.5 minutes before we get started, everybody. We will get things going at the top of the hour. If you're here live. If you're not here live, you can click the link in the video description and go right to the beginning, or just hang out with us. So you've started to see my new Security Plus videos. Yes, there are a number of things that are added. 50% of the exam is new. You haven't even gotten to the real new stuff yet. So it's coming. I've got another 5 videos that I'm releasing today on Security Plus, and I've got 7 that I recorded yesterday, and we'll probably record more over the weekend. So it's a little bit of everything going on there. I guess we could start that. What else do we need to have ready to go? 5 minutes, 4.5 minutes to go. We'll figure it out. You're scared to death to retake the A+ exams. Why are you retaking the exams? Or did you not pass the first time through? That would be one reason to retake them. But once you're certified, I guess maybe if your certification expired, it's only good for 3 years after all. So if you don't renew it in that 3 years, then you would have to take the exams again. Otherwise, you never have to take the exam again. Don't do that. So don't go there. What do I recommend, Network Plus or CCNA? I recommend you pick the one that makes sense for your particular path, for your particular career goals. Those are 2 very different exams. You don't choose one or the other. You choose Network Plus if you need Network Plus. You choose CCNA if you need CCNA, but they are not the same thing, not even close. They're not even remarkably in the same ballpark. So that's one of those where I recommend both, but that's just me. I guess it also depends on what you've done in the past. So if you're already really, really, really familiar with networking, you've already gone through it, maybe CCNA would work for you because CCNA is not a entry-level cert, and Network Plus certainly is. So it's kind of the comparison. How similar to CompTIA practice tests, the online tests? I have no idea. I'm not at all familiar with the CompTIA practice tests. I can tell you all about my practice test. Thanks for asking. You got Professor Messer's practice exams book. I can tell you all about that. And I think it's very close to the same style as the exam. But I don't know anything about anyone else's stuff. I don't have any time to look at anybody else's stuff. I'm a little busy these days. Security Plus, whenever you're in the mode of churning through the videos, because I've been writing the content for months. So right now we're shooting video and editing video and shooting video and editing video and posting video and shooting audio and video. It's just a cycle. As I shoot, I edit, I post. I shoot, I edit, I post. And so it's just constant to go through all of those things. And as you get through that, as you get the content written, and that's what I do, I write the entire course prior to shooting the first video. It's really quick, relatively speaking. Building the content, researching, editing, making sure the content is correct, double checking, triple checking what you're finding, and getting it on the slide, that takes forever. That is a long, involved process. Process of actually sitting down and shooting the video is not that difficult, relatively speaking. Obviously, there's a difficulty and time associated with that. Absolutely. There is complexity with that, don't get me wrong, but it's not the same. It's almost automatic because you've already built out the content. The slides are written by me to prompt me for what I want to say on the slide. A lot of people say I read from the slides. It's actually the reverse. I write down what I want to say, and that's what is on the slide to prompt me. So it's almost a separate type of thing because I write all of it. I know exactly. Will Miami make the playoffs? It's a tough year. Defense is going to be important. You got to watch the turnovers. I don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, sure. I don't know. That's just what I always say. Any given Sunday, assuming we're talking about pro, I guess, that's my normal response. Yeah, they had a tough one last week. I don't know. Did they? It just sounds good, so I say it. That was challenging. There were some questionable calls in that game. Those coaching decisions, those were some interesting ones. There you go. We have to go back. What was the website on the IT crowd? You could learn how to talk sports. That's what I really should do, is go to that. All the inflections. We're about ready to go. Oh, we are ready to go. 3, 2, 1. It's time to get this thing started. Enough of that nonsense. Let's see if we can get, before we do that, there we go. We'll get the slide deck up and running. Maybe. There we go. Green light. Green light. It's time to go, everybody. Let's start this thing. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the December 2020 Professor Messer Core 2. That is the 220-1002 A+ study group. It's our second A+ study group of the week. 2 days ago, we did our Core 1. Now we're doing our Core 2. And in this first hour, I will be asking you questions that come directly from the Core 2 A+ exam objectives. And what's fun is that if you're here live, you get to participate and follow along with what we're doing. You get to effectively vote on what you think the right answer is. The way you would do that is you would go to professormesser.com/QA. Just pop open a new browser window and visit that particular URL. There's a question there waiting for you right now. We'll tell you what that is in a moment. There's also an app that you could get because everyone needs an app. This is the Socrative student app in your favorite app store. Go to wherever your favorite app store is on your mobile device and download that. There's a Socrative teacher app. That's the one for me, so make sure you get the right one. If you use the app, it's going to ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. Make sure you spell it right. It's right there on the screen. It's always there. It's right there at the bottom. ProfessorMesser.com is Professor Messer by itself is the name of the room. Now, if you do that, there will be a question waiting for you in that particular app or the particular window that you bring up. We call this our rewind question because it's a question I pulled from last month's study group, really just to see how much we can remember and to make sure that everybody's able to get in and answer questions in the Q&A. The question this month on the rewind asks, malware has been identified on a computer and the system has been removed from the network. Which of the following would be the best next step before remediation? Would that be to educate the end user, update the antivirus signatures, schedule scans, quarantine the system, or disable system restore? Now, if you think you know the answer, do not answer in the chat room. You instead want to go to professormesser.com/QA, the big blue bar on your screen right there. That's where you want to go. ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. We'll come back to that answer in just a moment. Thanks for being here. Thanks for following along with what we're doing and keeping track and showing up to see if you know what the answers are on the pop quiz. It's always fun to do. Of course, we have daily messages and pop quiz questions that you can get on our Twitter, ProfessorMesser.com/Twitter. There is a pretty picture version of it that I put on Instagram. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/Instagram. There's a theme to the Instagram. The A+ has a theme, the Network Plus has a theme, and the Security Plus has a theme. So you'll start to see that as you go on the Instagram. And there's also all of our latest videos are always out on the YouTube. Right now, we're putting out lots of videos on Security Plus. Security Plus is the latest update. So you'll see Security Plus videos. There's probably another 5 that are going up today. So how would you know they're there unless you subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell? Go to ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube to do that. Today, we're going to talk about the 220-1002. All the questions I ask are from the 220-1002. In the after show, you can ask about anything. But for this first hour, we'll talk about the 220-1002. This was a series of exams that was released on January the 15th of last year. So it's about 2 years old now. That means that we would expect the retirement for this to be somewhere around July of 2022. So that is more than 18 months from now. So if you are studying for the 220-1002 here in December of 2020, you have plenty of time to study. It's going to be around for quite some time, till July of 2022. Lots to do there. On the 220-1002, you need to earn a 700 on your exam on a scale from 100 to 900. It's kind of an odd scale, but that's the way CompTIA does it. In the 220-1002, if you studied previous versions, the 900 series, almost a quarter of this exam is brand new. So don't use older study materials to study for this latest exam. You'll be missing content. You'll be learning some things that aren't even on this exam, and it's enough to cause you to fail. So A book is a relatively inexpensive thing compared to the cost of taking the exam again. So make sure you have books that say they are for the 220-1002 specifically. Make sure you're familiar with those. The questions we're going to go through today are specific to the Core 2 exam. They will be focusing on operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, operational procedures. So those are the four main domains of the 220-1002. Now, of course, all of my videos are available for you to watch online every minute of every video. They're not behind a registration. They're not behind a paywall. You can simply come to my site, click on them, and watch them, or you can go to YouTube. There's a playlist. You can watch them all there. There's nothing more that you would have to do to make that happen. Of course, I have other things that you can also purchase to go along with the videos. There are course notes. There are practice exams. There's my Exam Hacks ebook. You can get preferred access Q&A to this study group. If you want to learn how to gain access to that, become a member of the site. It's at professormesser.com/1002success. Also downloadable videos, downloadable audio. I just try to put everything there for you out there on the Success Bundle. That's at professormesser.com/1002success. Plenty of things that you can learn about from there. I've also got free Q&A on my site. You can find all of the Take 10 questions on my site. I think I'm going to put another 40 of them up this weekend. So feel free to have a look at that as well. It's at professormesser.com/take10. It's an archive of the questions that we do during our study group. So it's a good way to test yourself to see how well do you know this content. There's a lot there to go through in figuring out the details of this. There's also a video replay of this available immediately afterwards. There's also an audio-only podcast version of this replay available. So if you have a podcast listening program and you just want this downloaded automatically so you can listen when you're in the car, when you're working out, wherever you happen to be, you can find links to that at professormesser.com/podcast, or just look for the Professor Messer Study Group on your favorite streaming audio service. So go to the Spotify, go to the Google Podcast, whatever you're using, it's probably there as well. And if it isn't, let me know and I'll put it there. Why not? There's also on our YouTube videos timestamps available. They're available about a day after this because my marketing manager, Lori, has to go through this and listen to the whole thing and put the timestamps on it. Thank you, Lori, for doing this. Chat room, if you like these, please tell Lori thank you as well. She's watching this. She's watching the replay of the chat go by. So she, of course, is happy to hear that some of you are able to take advantage of this. You can go back years with these timestamps and find exactly what you are looking for when we go to all of those things. So thank you, Lori. We appreciate it. Thanks for going through all of this, even if it is at 2x speed. That's the important part. We'll get through all of those. Well, let's go back and talk about that question we had. Our rewind question of the month is, malware has been identified on a computer and the system has been removed from the network. Which of the following would be the best next step before remediation? Would that be to educate the end user, update the antivirus signatures, schedule scans, quarantine the system, or disable system restore? Now, some of you probably recognize this question as being one that is specific to the different steps of removing malware from a system. And let's see how we did on this one. 55% of you chose answer E, disable system restore. 23% of you said quarantine the system. 10% said update the antivirus signatures, and single digits for educate the end user and scheduling scans. Well, 56% of you said disable system restore, and I would say that 56% of you were absolutely correct. If I could put the right thing on the screen, there we go. You would see that indeed disabling system restore is exactly what you should do after removing the system from the network. This is so that you can delete any of the restore points on this system that probably are also infected by the malware. Malware is very good at doing this. Not only does it infect your running system, it goes into all of your restore points and infects those as well. That way, if you happen to roll back to a previous restore point, the malware simply rolls back with you. Even though it wasn't there when you saved the restore point, it doesn't matter. They've already infected the restore point. And so you want to be sure to delete all of those. When you disable the system protection or disable the system restore functionality, it deletes all of those restore points. And that's why before you start doing anything on your system, that's why we recommend, of course, you would delete those before going through that process. The steps of removing malware from your system are well documented in the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you're familiar with those. I go through all of them in order in my 221002 video, section 3.3 called Removing Malware. There's also a QR code on each one of these explanation screens, and that QR code will also take you to this video. So if you're watching this on the replay and you'd like to jump over to that, that's where you would find that particular thing. That's why we say you want to disable system restore. Now, why wouldn't it be? 22% of you said quarantine the system, but as we said in the question, the system has already been removed from the network. It's already quarantined. So it would not be quarantining the system, and all the rest of these happen after disabling system restore. So that is your right answer. If you answered E, disable system restore, 57% of you got that one absolutely right. You probably remember it from last week. Well done with that. Well, one of the things that we like to do on our first question of the month, our first new question of the month, is we like to do a performance-based question. Some of you may not be familiar with this. On the CompTIA exams, the first handful of questions you get will not be multiple choice. We're so used to multiple choice. This was a multiple choice question where you had a question and there were multiple choices to choose from. So you have kind of a percentage chance of getting it right. You could guess and get it absolutely right. Well, CompTIA doesn't want to make it that easy for you. So at the beginning of the exam, they give you questions that are not multiple choice. These might be fill in the blank. They might put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. They might give you a Windows utility that you have to use. They might give you a drag and drop question, a matching question. You may have to put things in order from highest to lowest or fastest to slowest. These can be difficult questions if you are not ready for them, but you're going to be ready for them, so it's not a problem. The advantage you have, of course, is that no matter how they ask the questions are all coming from the exam objectives. So make sure you're very familiar with the exam objectives. Then it doesn't matter how they ask the question. You're going to know how to answer it. So I have for you a performance-based question. It's the first new question of every month is a performance-based question. And today's performance-based question, since I got a lot of good feedback on the last one of these we did, is a question at a command prompt. And this particular question is a Linux question that asks, on a Linux computer, find all instances of the word warning in the file install.log. So I want to know, do not put this in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA. There is a fill in the blank for you waiting there. How would you do this from the command prompt that you see right here? On a Linux computer, find all instances of the word warning in the file install.log. And see if you happen to know what this is. Now, this is a Linux command line question. So hopefully you've read through your exam objectives and you know that there are Linux and Mac OS command line questions in there. There's a lot of Linux and command line utilities you have to know. And this is one of them. Well, that's my hint for you anyway. I know that's not much of a hint, but that's what we're looking for, is that particular piece. Will CompTIA still ask about Windows 7 since the extended support is past due? Absolutely. Why do you think that the date associated with end of life has anything to do with whether users will use that operating system? Has nothing to do with it. Windows 7 continues to be used. In fact, if we have time in the after show, I'll pull up some of the stats that I have from my website because I can tell the operating systems that people are using when they hit my website. And let's see how much Windows 7 and Windows 8 is still out there. It'll be interesting to see. So remind me of that in the after show because I will forget by the time we get there. But this one is definitely, see, people in the chat room saying, yeah, I know someone who refuses to move from Windows 7. Yeah. Someone else. I had Windows 7 until yesterday. Changing operating systems is not something you just jump into. There's a learning curve. People are comfortable with their OS. Takes a lot to move from one operating system to another. So you will have users that will still use this operating system. It's one of those things anyway. So hopefully that's what you'll run into as well as you step through all of this. So let's see how you did with this one. On a Linux computer, find all instances of the word warning in the file install.log. A lot of you were putting in the correct, close to the correct answer, close enough. I will accept most of these coming through. But the question I am looking for, the answer I am looking for here is a command, and the very specific command we want is one called grep. Grep is a utility commonly seen in Linux, Unix, and those types of things that you'd use to find some text that's in a file. This grep utility, incredibly useful, used all the time. If you're doing anything in Linux, you've probably used grep or needed to use grep to have that happen. And it's very simple to use. You would use simply the grep command. You would type in the pattern of what you're looking for. In our case, it would be the word warning. And if you notice, it's an uppercase W at the beginning. Grep, unless you specify otherwise, is case sensitive. And then you put in the name of the file that you're looking for. So it's grep. If you're looking for the pattern called failed, and then the file name is auth.log, you would type that in right at the command prompt. Here I did it on my Linux machine. Grep failed auth.log, and inside of that file, it did find a particular line of text. It gives you the entire line that it found it in. So you see the entire line that it found with that particular text in it, and there's that word failed, even colored it for me in this one. So we can see where that is. If there were multiple instances of the word failed, if other lines had that word in it, it would show me those other lines as well. I wonder on my computer, I wrote this by looking at my log file. So I wonder if I bring up my log file, what was it? What was the word? It was, I have to go back now. It was the word warning in a file install.log. Do I have this here? And do I want to show you this? Okay, I can show you this. Let's do that. I'm going to move you over to my screen. So I'm on my computer. This is what's running on my system. And let's grep warning install.log. And it goes into this install.log, and it shows me there is definitely a line of information there. Let's run it again somewhere down the screen so you can actually see the words that are there. So in fact, it found a line of information in there where I was probably installing some program on my computer. The name of my computer is Odyssey, and it is the install D program, and it's gave me a warning that the library extensions no such file or directory on my computer. So there, grep worked great on my computer. I'm running Mac OS, and so this worked perfectly on here. In fact, I probably have a screenshot of me doing that. Look, it's the same line of information. So that's what you come up with. All you have to do is go through this and bring up the question that we have there. What is the variation for Windows? Well, there is one. I think there was a find command back in the day of DOS. I don't think that still applies for Windows. There are grep versions, because grep is a utility that performs the function in a very particular way. There is a WinGrep, and there is a grep that you can get that is part of the GNU utilities for Windows. So you could get a command line grep that effectively is a compiled version of the same grep used in Linux, but it's compiled for Windows. That'd be another good way to use that as well. So a couple of different options for grepping. And you often get so used to doing it that you are in Windows and you type grep, not remembering, oh, I'm not in Linux anymore, to be able to do that. Load up your Linux operating system, try out these commands. There's a big list of commands you need to know. They are all in the 221,002 video, section 1.5, called System Utilities. And there's some others in there for Linux command line utilities as well. I think that may even be the right, it's basic Linux commands. That's the correct one. Section 1.9, basic Linux commands, is the one you want to go to for that. That is the correct answer, is grep. So hopefully you were familiar with grep and being able to use that. That is one that's going to be very important for you if you start to do anything in Linux, and it's going to be important for you if you want to do anything on the exam, because it's part of the exam objectives as well. Hopefully you did pretty well with our performance-based question of the month, and that might give you some ideas of other command lines you can run through as well. Let's move on now past our performance-based questions. Let's do a multiple choice-based question and see how we do with that. Next on our list is a question that asks, a Windows administrator would like to test the audio output on a user's laptop. Which of the following would be the best way to perform this test? Would it be MSTSC? Would it be DXDiag? Would it be MSInfo32? Would it be regedit? Or would it be services.msc? If you think you know the answer, no answering in the chat room. You want to answer by going to professormesser.com/QA and locking in your answer. That question again, a Windows administrator would like to test the audio output on a user's laptop. Which of the following would be the best way to perform this test? Would it be MSTSC, DXDiag, MSInfo32, regedit, or services MSC? So hopefully you're familiar with testing audio output. That's nothing worse than your laptop not outputting audio. So you've now been called down to this laptop to get the audio working. Well, how are you going to troubleshoot this? That's your scenario. That's what you'll have to figure out. You don't really get a lot of, I mentioned in a previous study group, and someone mentioned this online earlier today, is you don't get a lot of trivia questions on the exam. And they were wondering, why do you have to memorize everything if you don't get, if you still have to memorize things? Well, if you're not getting trivia questions, why am I having to memorize trivia? Well, you're not memorizing trivia. The questions are not asking things in a trivial way. They're usually giving you a scenario. But you have to memorize these things so that you can solve the problem that's being presented to you in this scenario. So this is a very short scenario, a couple of sentences, but a scenario nonetheless, and working through those. So a good example. So for in the chat room, I just upgraded my old laptop from Windows 8 to Windows 10, and now my audio isn't working. I can't figure it out. I wonder what utility you could use to help troubleshoot the audio. I think there's one that you're about to find out. If you haven't already, you might have. We'll have to see what that gives you. This may solve all of your problems. Maybe not all of your problems, but perhaps one of your problems. Let's see how you did with this one. A Windows administrator would like to test the audio output on a user's laptop. Which of the following would be the best way to perform this test? MSTSC, DXDiag, MSInfo32, regedit, or services.msc. 60% of you say it's DXDiag. 23% of you say it's services.msc. And then we have single digits for everything else. 9% said MSInfo32, 6% said MSTSC, and 1% said regedit. Well, if you're part of that 61% that said DXDiag, then you are absolutely correct. These are diagnostics available that you could use that will perform the DirectX diagnostics, which really focus on audio and video. So if you're trying to troubleshoot anything relating to audio, anything relating to video, this is a great utility to help you out with doing those things. This utility will help you with the 3D graphics functionality, and also helps with input options as well, because this was designed to work with DirectX. DirectX is used quite a bit for interactive and gaming type functions, so there's a lot of input, a lot of output. So anything input and output is really the purview of this DXDiag utility, and being able to use that. And even if you're not using DirectX, it's still a great utility to use to troubleshoot video and audio and input type functionality, all in a very nice compact Windows front end to be able to do that. Got tabs across the top for display, for sound, and for input. So you can see all of that is there. Great utility. It'll run through and give you visual feedback on the screen. It'll give you audio feedback so you can test the audio. And it's great to see if it'll even tell you a summary on the screen. What are you running here? If you flip over to the display or the sound or the input, it will show you all of the utility drivers that you have for that particular functionality. And if the person in the chat room who upgraded from Windows 8 to Windows 10 suddenly finds that their audio driver was not installed during the update, this will tell you that. You'll certainly know that it didn't install properly because you would not be able to hear the sound. Or maybe it will make a sound, and now you have even more things to troubleshoot. DXDiag, a great little utility, and that is the correct answer. 62% of you chose DXDiag to do that. Now, services.msc is a great front end that allows you to enable, disable, and manage Windows services. Those are those background processes that are running that you really don't see. They don't have a user interface to interact with them. There's no user intervention for those utilities. It's things like your print spooler. It's things like a disk cleanup process or a scheduling process behind the scenes, all run as services. And if you need to turn on, turn off, or manage those services, you would do that from services.msc. That the services.msc does not provide you with any way to test audio output, however. 9% said MSInfo32, and MSInfo32 does give you information about how your system is configured. That is your system configuration utility. Those system configurations will tell you information about the audio, what drivers are loaded for the audio, what version of the drivers are loaded, but they don't actually test the audio output. Doesn't do any testing whatsoever. So that would not be the best one to use. MSTSC is the Microsoft Terminal Services Controller. I think I got that right. Terminal Services is remote desktop. It's the remote desktop client. Terminal Services Client, is that what it is? That's what it is. So if you're working through doing anything with remote desktop and you're running the remote desktop client on your Windows computer, you're running a utility called MSTSC. I know it doesn't say remote desktop, but that's what it is. It's Terminal Services Client. That is the original name of all of that direct remote access functionality is the TSC. So that's why it's named that way. And then regedit is the registry editor. Neither Microsoft TSC nor regedit, MSInfo32 or services, none of those test audio output. So that's why you want to really focus on the only option here. The best one, the only option is DXDiag. If you answered B, DXDiag, you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Let's do another multiple choice question. Here we go. As we go through all of these, the next multiple choice question asks, the users at a remote small office location use an 8-digit PIN to connect new wireless devices to the network. Which of the following would best describe this process? Would that be WPA2, SSID, WPS, NAC, or WEP? The users at a remote small office location use an 8-digit PIN to connect new wireless devices to the network. Which of the following would best describe this process? Is it WPA2, SSID, WPS, NAC, or WEP? All you have to do is visit professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. That is the link that you can go to, professormesser.com/QA. So glad you were able to, you asked the question, I answer it immediately. It's right there. You can always have that link available. It takes you right to Socrative, and you can go through and answer that particular question. And you may have even done this before. You may have used an 8-digit PIN to connect a new wireless device to the network. What was that? What was it called? Well, that's what we need to remember as we're working through this. Maybe you know what it was called. It's got to be one of these, right? These all look like wireless connectivity networking things, right? It's just five different options. They're all 5 real things. They're all actual networking wireless connectivity things. That's the real question is, which one is it? See if you happen to remember by going to professormesser.com/QA and locking in your answer. We'll figure out what this is in just a moment. Let's see. I'm going to let a few more people lock it in. Let's see how we did on this one. The question was that users at a remote small office location use an 8-digit PIN to connect new wireless devices to the network. Which of the following would best describe this process? WPA2, SSID, WPS, NAC, or WEP? And let's see how we did. We're a little torn on this one. 45% of us say WPS. 30%, a big chunk, say WPA2. 13%, just in at double digits, say it's WEP. And then you have 9% said SSID and 4% said NAC for these. Well, if you're using an 8-digit personal identification number, then you're using a very specific technology called Wi-Fi Protected Setup, or WPS. It used to be called Wi-Fi Simple Config. Probably don't even see that name any longer. But what it is called now in all of your access points, your wireless routers, is WPS, Wi-Fi Protected Setup. The problem is that we introduced encryption on these access points. It was all put together by people that created the access points. These are very smart people that know a lot about wireless technology, but they didn't know a lot about user interfaces or how to get things done easily. And so people were not using encryption because it was just too difficult to figure out how to set the right key. Well, do you do it in hexadecimal on the access point? And is it a different passphrase? They were using passphrases and different codes and hexadecimal, and what was it? It became too difficult. So the standards team sat down and said, well, let's create a way we can make this very easy. We'll make it so that someone just simply has to look at a personal identification number that's either configured on the access point or, in my case, even written on the access point. Your access point, have a look at the bottom of your access point. You probably see an 8-digit PIN on your access point as well, which means all you have to do is show up at your access point, you connect a device, and it's going to prompt on that device and say, all you have to do is enter the PIN. And it will take care of all of the configurations for passphrases, for encryption mechanisms, for what you set for encryption. It does all of that for you. Sounds like a great idea. That sounds like exactly what we would want. However, one of the challenges with this is that it was actually implemented as one 4-digit PIN and one 3-digit PIN, making it exceptionally easy to brute force. And at the very beginning of this, there was no lockout mechanism in a lot of these access points. So when you get through it, that makes it very easy. Now, if people in the chat room even mentioning, maybe you don't even use a PIN. There's different options for WPS. You can push a button on the access point. On some access points, it's near field communication. You just have to bring your phone close to it, and it will synchronize this information up. And there used to be a way you would plug in with a USB key to the access point and then plug in with a USB key to your device. I don't know. That's what they did. They realized very quickly that was a bad idea too. So that's not even part of the standard any longer to make that happen. WPS, though, is a little bit of a security challenge. Even with the brute force lockouts that are in a lot of the devices, it still is a methodology that has a little bit too much lax of security associated with it. And that's why generally on a corporate network, on an enterprise network, on a business network, we usually disable this by default. This might be something you can use at home as long as you perhaps disable the personal identification number part of it. Maybe you turn that part off and you do it so you have to be in front of it pushing a button. Maybe that's a little more secure for you. You have to figure out what makes sense in your environment and use WPS. But that was the right answer, WPS. 45% of you chose C, WPS. That is the right answer. 29% chose WPA2. WPA2 is the encryption methods that we commonly use on a number of our modern routers, modern access points. The WPA2 is an encryption method that is ultimately what your system uses to communicate back and forth between that access point and your device. But WPA2 itself doesn't have anything to do with typing in an 8-digit PIN. That 8-digit PIN process is solely associated with a WPS. So you would use WPS with the PIN that will ultimately configure your system to use WPA2. See how that works? So not the best description of the process. That's why WPA2 would not be the right answer. 13% of you said the wireless encryption or wireless equivalency protocol, the original method that we used to connect to these devices, was WEP. WEP obviously very badly designed. A lot of cryptographic vulnerabilities with that. Pretty much everybody's using WPA2. It's even hard to find an access point anymore that even allows you to use WEP. We have 9% that chose SSID. That is the service set identifier. It's the wireless name associated with the wireless network. That doesn't have anything to do with an 8-digit PIN. And then network authentication and network access control, that's what NAC is a method so that your system can provide you with access to the network and configure your access to the network in the proper ways. That has nothing to do with an 8-digit PIN either. So you've got a couple of options to choose from here, and the only one that was really the best option was indeed WPS. That was the right answer. So if you chose C, WPS, 45% of you got that one absolutely right. So that's, if you're not familiar with these technologies, by the way, make sure you go back to your exam objectives and have a look at them. You will certainly be asked something about wireless security on the 221002. Let's do another multiple choice question. How are we on time? We're great on time. The next multiple choice question on our list asks, a user is complaining that the battery in their 2-year-old mobile phone is not maintaining a charge for more than a few hours. Which of the following would be the best way to resolve this issue? Would you replace the battery? Would you disable all wireless radios? Would you replace the system certificates? Would you disable the backlight? Or would you disable the audio output? So a user is complaining the battery in their 2-year-old mobile phone is not maintaining a charge for more than a few hours. Which of the following would be the best way to resolve this issue? You replace the battery? Do you disable all wireless radios? Do you replace the system certificates? Do you disable the backlight? Or do you disable the audio output? There's a lot of disabling and replacing here. Pick the one that makes sense for you by going to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and locking in your answer and have that there. Yeah, I bet if you do have an older wireless router, I bet it still has that web functionality. It'd have to be an old one, though. I think they did finally remove it as part of the standard. I don't think it can be in there anymore and be a modern, approved wireless device to have that there. This is one, by the way, that if you're in the process of looking at a new wireless router, definitely get those that have the newest technologies in them. There's a little bit of a change. The transition's going on right now, so make sure you're familiar as you go through all of these to figure out the details. This question, however, shifts gears to the mobile side, and there is a good chunk of things you have to know about on the mobile side to be able to troubleshoot and maintain, and that's all part of the 221002. Make sure you're familiar with those as well. So that's one that can really, really help you and get the options there. The type of wireless router I have does not allow me to set WEP. And it has a lot of nice functionalities to be able to have a backup connection. So I could have 2 internet connections going into it. If the first one fails, it fails over to the secondary internet connection. Now, I'm not using that. Just because I say this, now I better knock on something. My internet connection's relatively good. It's relatively up and running all the time, but it's nice to have that option to figure out what that happens to be. So we'll figure out, in this case, what the option happens to be. Short battery life is an ongoing problem that you have to be able to troubleshoot. Let's see how you did with this one. A user is complaining the battery in their 2-year-old mobile phone is not maintaining a charge for more than a few hours. Which of the following would be the best way to resolve this issue? Would it be to replace the battery, disable all wireless radios, replace the system certificates, disable the backlight, or disable the audio output? How did we do? 81% of you said you would just swap out the battery. That's what you do. Just replace it. 9% said disable all wireless radios, and 9% also said disable the backlight. Talk about those in a moment. And 1%, a tie for third, said replace the system certificates. Another 1% said disable the audio output. So this is one that is a little bit of a challenge because short battery life creates a problem for everybody. These are mobile devices. You don't want to be tethered to power all day. And having a battery that only lasts a few hours is not a very good battery in a device. But you sometimes will see this as these devices. Now, you might be able to, if this is something that is a relatively new phone, maybe you want to conserve time and conserve the battery that you have, you could, of course, start disabling features. Turn off the 802.11, turn off Bluetooth, turn off all of the radios inside of this device. You could even also, on the operating system that you're using, see what application might be using up all the battery. It's certainly possible that an application has gone rogue and it's just using up and churning through all of your battery time because it's just a poorly written application. Those things are rare, but they do happen. These days, our phones are checking for those kinds of things. It will stop an application that performs those types of functions. It'll turn it off so it doesn't take up all your battery life. So occasionally, it's not the only issue. But the biggest problem, especially in a phone that is aged, one that you've had for a number of years, and you let it, of course, you use it, and the battery depletes. You plug it in, the battery recharges. You unplug it and use it throughout your day. And at the end of the day, you plug it back in and let it recharge. There's only so many cycles of recharging you're going to get out of our modern nickel, lithium, metal hydride, sectioned off batteries. I guess everything now is a lithium ion. But if you start getting into that, you'll notice that it just is not keeping as much of a charge as it used to. And that's because it does lose its ability to keep a charge as the more you recharge it. There's only so many recharge cycles that you're going to have available to it. And if it's an older system, there's nothing you can really do to really fix this issue, especially if you're not really going to be able to disable enough features to somehow now make it seem like new, to have it last all day long. That's not going to be your best option either. And that was the question, by the way, is which of the following would be the best way to resolve this issue? You want to have this phone so that it's something you can carry around all day. Disabling all the wireless radios effectively turns it into a brick. That's not any good. That's a horrible solution. Oh, you can't use any wireless or connect to any mobile network, and you can't make phone calls. There you go. Problem solved. That's not going to help you. It's also not really going to save much of your battery either. We've also, 8% of you said disable the backlight. And although the backlight does use some power, it doesn't use that much power. It doesn't use so much power that it would take away 3/4 of the available time on this device. It's one of those situations where if you've ever done this, you've gone a few years with the same phone and you've just gotten used to kind of plugging it in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Then you finally get that new phone and the battery lasts all day. And you wonder, why didn't I upgrade sooner? I could have really used the better battery, because that's really where the problem was the battery that was there. Replacing system certificates won't help at all with the battery. And disabling the audio output, how often is the machine making noise that disabling audio output's even going to help you? So that's not going to help you either. Although disabling wireless radios and disabling the backlight will help you a little bit if you are at the very edge of trying to conserve battery on the system, that's great. But the situation here is that it's a 2-year-old phone. It's only lasting a few hours. It should be lasting 3 and 4 times that amount of length of charge. So the best thing you can do here, replace the battery. It'll be like you have a new phone. That is the right answer. If you chose A, replace the battery, that is the right answer. To have that is overcharging. Will overcharging shorten the life of your phone battery? I don't know what overcharging is. There is a circuitry within the charging mechanism of your mobile device, of your devices, that prevents overcharging, if you want to call it that. Overcharging doesn't shorten the battery life. It destroys the battery. So that's why we don't overcharge. That's not even a situation where we are shortening the life of your battery. You will damage the battery. It will stop being a battery if you overcharge. So that's why we have those circuitries in the charging systems that prevent that, for having all of those things there. So that's grab your phone, take it to your mobile phone provider, have them swap the battery out, and you'll be in much better shape with those. Well, this is a good example of going through these questions and trying to figure out what makes the most sense. And this was one of the biggest challenges I always heard from people as they went to take the exam. The exam kind of has its own style of questions. They ask you a lot of questions about what is the best, what is the first, what is the next thing you should do. The questions themselves are very scenario-based. We've seen a number of those today. And there weren't enough resources. I don't find there's enough resources on the internet available to really give you a feel for what the exam is like. And so what I did was create an entire set of practice exams that, in my mind, tends to emulate some of the style of the actual exam. I tried to take the same flavor, the same voice, the same method of asking the questions, and I tried to give you questions. These are all new, brand new questions that I wrote. These are all original questions, but they have the same flavor as exam questions you would see on the exam. That was the goal with this anyway. There's 3 practice exams in my practice exams book, a combination of multiple choice and performance-based questions, just like you'll get on your actual exam. And what I tried to do is give you also some feedback as you were taking the exam as to why any question was right or wrong. So here's a question directly from my practice exam book. Practice exam A, question 14 asks, which of the following governmental policies manages the use of personal data? It's a pretty cut and dry question, and it's giving you a few answers that you could choose from. Is it PCI DSS? Is it EULA? Is it GDPR? Is it FOSS? Those are your 4 different options. Now, in the book, you've got the options of moving them through and figuring out how you would like to kind of work through them. You can go to a quick answer page where it just gives you the answer. Or, of course, you can click on the book itself and be able to figure out what this is. And we're going to click on the details, and it's going to take you to an answer page that gives you the question again, and it answers C, GDPR. And it says, GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, is a European regulation that provides data protection and privacy for individuals in the European Union. Now, of course, I would not have chosen that. I would have chosen the wrong thing. And on a lot of the questions that I take on these practice exams, it tells you why the question was right, but they don't ever seem to tell you why the wrong questions were wrong. Well, not in my book. I wrote for every wrong answer, I wrote and explained why this is the wrong answer. So if you answered PCI DSS, you can see that the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard is a set of guidelines for protecting credit card data. Their industry guidelines are not directly associated with governmental regulation. So you will find out in the answer why the answer was wrong. And I almost think reading through the incorrect answers teaches you as much as the correct answers. You can scroll down a little bit more in the answer page, and I've got a QR code. In fact, you can pull out your phone right now and just turn the camera on. You don't have to take a picture of the screen. Just put it up to the screen where the QR code is, and it will take you to the page for the 221002 Objective 4.6 under Privacy, Licensing, and Policies. That will take you to the video where this particular question came from. So you can learn more about it when you go through this. Or if you're on the digital version like I am, you can simply click on the screen. There's also a physical version. This is the physical version of the practice exams book. It's exactly the same content, just in the physical printed form. And it's one, if you buy the physical version, you get the digital for free. That's my practice exam book. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/core2PE, CORE number 2 PE for Core 2 practice exams. So hopefully that'll be something that might help you. And of course, just like with my course notes, every dollar that you spend on these study materials, I'm hoping you get the money back in your studies. I feel that they're good study materials, but they also help us keep things going here. So we always appreciate that as well. Let's do another question. I have a multiple choice question next that does ask again about some of these abbreviations, some of these acronyms. So here is the next one on our list that asks, which of the following would best regulate the storage and use of PII on a company website? Would that be, this may be a gimme, is it PCI DSS? I'm recognizing some of these. Is it EULA? Is it HIPAA? Is it AUP? Or is it GDPR? So those are five different options to choose from. We're going to see if anybody was listening to the commercial right now. Which of the following would best regulate the storage and use of PII on a company website? Is it PCI DSS? Is it EULA? Is it HIPAA? Is it AUP? Or is it GDPR? Some of these look familiar to me. Some of these we might have even just learned about. Some of these we did not, though. Some of these are new. All of these are real. I didn't make up any of these names. So all of those are real things you should know. If you think you know the answer, please know answering in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See what that happens to be. Yeah, the practice exams book takes forever to write. These take months to be able to put together because they're just huge. The practice exam book, how many pages is this? 380 something, 382 pages, 383. So it's just huge to have that amount of data there for 3 practice exams. But I think the core of it is giving you the explanations. I spend much more time in the explanations than I do anything else because that's where the meat of it happens to be and figuring out those details. See, if you had only listened to the live read, If only it had been there. I'm not even sure why I did the live read with that particular question. There are 3 exams, 90 questions in each exam. That's sort of how it goes. Have all of that there. Yes, that wasn't a commercial. That was a customer service, a community service function to have all of that there. It is a live read. So if anything else, it's a chance to go get some coffee, if anything else. As long as you get the part at the end, that's this part, professormesser.com/core2pe. That's the important part. So if you missed it, there's the commercial. Thank you so much for watching. That's where that is. Let's see how you did with this. A lot of people answered this one quickly for some reason. I don't know what I was thinking. Which of the following would best regulate the storage and use of PII on a company website? There's a little bit here you do have to know about, like you have to know what a PII is. How do we do? We're very torn on this one. I am surprised how torn we are on this. 37% said GDPR. 19% said PCI DSS. I'm just shocked. I'm agog at the answers. 18% said HIPAA. 16% said EULA. 11% said AUP. Maybe it was PII that threw people. Maybe it was that term. It's one of those terms you have to know. They throw so many terms in the questions themselves to have this here. But the question, of course, asked which of the following would best regulate the storage and use of PII on a company website. And as folks are saying in the chat room, wait a second, isn't that the EU? Well, the EU it's a real place with real data and real websites. So yes, it is. And the GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulation. If you are in the EU, this is what would best regulate the storage and use of personally identifiable information on a company website. That is what PII is personally identifiable information. PII is things like your name, your address, your phone number, your social security number. They're things that are personal to you, something that would associate that with you. Those are things that become pretty important, and they do extend to medical things as well. So anything personal technically is PII. The GDPR is a set of rules and regulations that require website owners, the owners of this data, people who use this data, to be able to manage the data in a particular way. Some people have called this the right to be forgotten regulation, because this, if you are in the EU, you can send an email to the website owner and you can tell the website owner, delete all of my information, please, thank you. And they have to delete it, because if they don't, they can be fined by, I don't know, the EU people, the people of the EU Policing Academy. I don't know who does that. I get emails all the time to my website from people in the EU that say, delete all of my data, please. And I am under no obligation to do so. They tell me I am. And by the way, if you read through the GDPR, people outside the EU says, no, you must comply or we'll send you a bill. I guess. You're welcome to do so, I guess. In the United States, I have to keep people's financial information around. I can't start deleting people's the purchases they make, so I can't remove everything from my site. But if somebody was to come to my site, they haven't bought anything, they haven't done anything financial on my site, but they have created an account and they say, please delete my account. Yeah, I'll delete it. I don't care. Sure. You want me to delete it? I don't care where you live. You can be in the United States. I'll delete it. So it is a relatively unusual regulation in that the users have control over their data. That's something we don't see other places, but it's also a little bit weird. This is from the same people that brought you the little button on your screen that says, are cookies okay? Can we put cookies here? Is that all right? Yes or no? Well, yeah, I wouldn't be able to log in without the cookies. So yes, it's one of those that's the people who make regulations. It's good. They have something to do now. So they made more regulations to do this, I guess. If you want me to remove your data, just ask me. And if I can, I will. And if I can't, I won't. In my privacy policy, by the way, I document all of this. So I tell you, due to tax regulations, I just can't start deleting things. The IRS does not like it when I start deleting things. So that's why. GDPR is the right answer here. If you answered E, GDPR, that's the one we were looking for. The PCI DSS manages, it's a regulatory, sort of a private regulatory system set up by the credit card companies to determine how you manage credit card data. We've got an end-user license agreement. That's that thing that you never read through when you install an application, and at the bottom you check the box that says, I have read through and I agree with everything that's in here. That's what an EULA is. So that's why end-user license agreements are so important. If you're an organization that's buying a large group of licenses, you are most certainly going through the EULA. You're handing it off to your lawyers. There's negotiations that take place. In a large environment, EULA is very important. You have HIPAA, healthcare something, 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 something. Why can I not remember these things today? The healthcare in the act of thing of act. Why am I having such an issue? The HIPAA regulations designate how someone is to control and manage your healthcare information. So if you're working in the healthcare environment, if you're working through, you're keeping patient records, anything relating to healthcare, the HIPAA piece is going to be where you're going to focus. We've got an AUP. So your users are all probably have an employee document they've gone through, and they get a list of the things they are allowed to do on the network and the things they are not allowed to do on the network. And this user policies are going to determine what is the appropriate use of using a telephone, of using a laptop, of using a smartphone. And the acceptable use policy is the one that allows you to understand, or at least document for the users so they understand what that happens to be. And then you've got lastly the GDPR, which is what we just talked about. That is the right answer. None of those other regulations or rules have anything to do with PII, at least not to the level of the GDPR, and that's why eGDPR is the right answer. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, one of the things you can do is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There is a Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, put your name, put your email address, put in the subject line that this is the December 2020 Core 2 study group, and on a line by itself in the body of the message, put the super secret code word of the month, HIPAA. That kind of threw you a curveball there. A super secret code word of the month is HIPAA, HIPAA, or something close to that would be good. The HIPAA is our super secret code word of the month. In about a week or so, I'll send you back an email that's got a digitally signed CEU. You must have watched this for an hour, so I'll send you back an hour-long view of, or at least something where you can have an hour-long CEU that you can at least show CompTIA that you really were here. If you're someone who's still collecting CEUs, not everybody's doing that. That's the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. Click Contact Us, fill it out, and put HIPAA in as the super secret code word of the month. I know we're at the top of the hour. Let's do one more question. We have one more that we can do here. And this question, since we were talking about Windows earlier, we'll end with the Windows question. Which of the following would be the best way to view virtual memory settings in Windows 10? Would that be disk management, system properties, devices and printers, network and sharing center, or programs and features? Which of the following would be the best way to view virtual memory settings in Windows 10? Would that be disk management, system properties, devices and printers, network and sharing center, or programs and features? You think you know the answer? Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room to figure out what that happens to be. The virtual memory settings, which you probably shouldn't be changing, but you as a system administrator will probably be in a position where you have to fix the ones for users that do go in and change it. So there are people that do kind of mess around with some. Maybe this will fix it. Maybe this will fix my email problems. I'll change the virtual memory settings. No, it doesn't. It just broke more things. So now you have to go in and fix it. So it's helpful to know where those settings are. Which of those would be the best way to view those. A lot of you are locking these out. I feel like a lot of you might bounce back on this one. I think we know what this one is. I'm feeling good about it, being able to answer these questions. A lot of the questions on the exam are questions about what is best, what is first, what is next. So you have to be able to look at the available answers, but it's not asking you of every possible thing you can do, what is the best thing. It's asking you of these available answers, which of these is the best thing. And that's the thing I think challenges people, is because they may see a question and say, oh, I would do this, which probably 90% of people might do. But you'll note that thing that 90% of people might do is not in the available answers. And this is something that happens all the time. As you're in an environment where things are locked down, there are things that are deleted. It's an operating system that is running at not full capacity. There may be things that you're not able to do. And so now you have to figure out, what do you do second then? What's your option if the first thing isn't available? And you have to know what that option might be. So some of the questions go down that road as well. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, which of the following would be the best way to view virtual memory settings in Windows 10? Would that be disk management, system properties, devices and printers, network and sharing center, or programs and features? 70% of you say it's system properties, but 22% of you said disk management is where you would go. And then 4% said programs and features, 3% said network and sharing, 1% said devices and printers. Not even all three combined is still single digits. It's really between disk management and system properties. And if you've ever gone into look at the performance settings of system properties, that's where this is. These are the system properties screen. If you bring this up, it normally brings up your computer name. This is under system. Brings up your computer name, the work group you're in, those types of things. There's a tab there for advanced. Under that advanced tab is a section for performance, which includes things like visual effects, processor scheduling, memory usage, and virtual memory. That's where it is. And if you click that settings option, you will see there's an option there of how the processor allocates processor resources and how you can configure virtual memory on the system. It gives you a summary of how much is being used. And if you click the change button, you would first go in and click that little link at the top that says automatically manage paging file size for all drives. That's the right answer, by the way. You would never manage that on this to be able to work through these. That is the choice. Is system properties. That's where you would find that, and you would allow Windows to manage it. Best choice is the best option. You're absolutely right. It is not available easily under disk management. That's not where you would go to make those changes. The best option for viewing and managing virtual memory settings, system properties, is where you would go. It becomes very useful to manage those system properties as well. So make sure you're familiar with all the different settings under there. You're probably going to run into a few of those on the exam. If you're ever dealing with system properties or any of those settings under that, that's where you would go to make that happen. All of the questions today came directly from the exam objectives. So you can always find those objectives at professormesser.com/objectives. I have a link there that will take you over to the CompTIA website. They're free, and they're an amazing checklist. They tell you everything you need to know to pass the exam. Everything. So that question that I always see comes up that says, what do I really need to know? You need to know everything that's in the exam objectives. That is the answer to that question, and they're all free and they're all there all the time. So in the chat room, people are saying, well, when am I usually live here doing one of these things? I'm glad you asked. You can always go to professormesser.com/calendar and find out exactly when our next event is going to be. So if you're watching this now months after we had it, none of these dates make sense of January 5th and January 7th for the Next A Plus study groups. You can go to our calendar and see exactly when the next events are going to be by going to professormesser.com/calendar or clicking the calendar link at the top of my website or looking at the calendar entries that are in the right sidebar of my website. I throw them in your face every chance I get so you can see when we're going to be here live and you'll know exactly when that's happening. So we do have 2 more CompTIA study groups before the end of the year. They're not on this list because this is for next month. But next week on Tuesday is the Network Plus study group. And on Thursday of next week is the Security Plus study group. We're cramming those into 1 week, which is not what we normally do, so that the rest of December and the holidays will be free for me to I guess, shoot Security Plus videos. I want to say to relax and spend time with my family. Of course, I will do that, but I'll also be shooting a lot of Security Plus videos during that time frame as well. Before you go, let me also let you know that a number of people have taken advantage of my security or my A+ course notes. The course notes are a way that you could get everything that's in my videos all in one document. So all of the text, all of the graphics, all of the charts I create. This is the PDF of the course notes for the 2002. It's a 50-page document with all the charts. There's the bullets. There's the upgrade links. All of the command line stuff is in there. It's an enormous document. And it's another great way to support the site as well. It's another great way to also plan for your exam. You've watched all the videos. You've read the books. But now you just need everything in one place. This is a great way to have everything in one place. ProfessorMesser.com/1000 notes. Well, although the part is over where I ask you the questions, we're just starting the part where you ask me the questions. Stick around for the after show, and I will open up the phone lines and take questions from the chat room, and we'll stay here and just chat about anything. Ask questions about anything you'd like. We'll be able to go through all of those as well. Don't forget about my course notes and success bundle at ProfessorMesser.com/1002success. We've also got daily pop quiz questions on Twitter and Instagram. Visit ProfessorMesser.com/Twitter or ProfessorMesser.com/Instagram. And if you're one of those people that does like to see the new videos that I put out, or you would like to be informed when we go live, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel at ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube. Thanks for being here. Thanks for answering your questions. Stick around for the after show. We'll see you on the other side, and we will see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Let's see if I can now get the phone lines up and running. You guys did really well. I was so surprised when the answer right after the demonstration of the practice exams book was so I thought that was going to be 99% of you. Now it's starting to make me realize how many people are listening to me really when I talk about the practice exams and the course notes. Now it's just one of those things. It's like when you first turn on your phone and you set up your voicemail and you're like, okay, I'll get all these people that are missing me. And then you get no voicemails, 0 calls. Oops, I hit the wrong button to screen calls. Let's go back. I don't want to screen my calls. I want to host a show. And I want to host a show and start a show. Bear with me a moment. I'm going to get the phone lines up. The PII, you're right. I think that's probably what it was the PII. It was sort of a new term I threw in there that people had not seen before. Bear with me. I need to start my Skype up and get that running. If you will give me just a moment. And we'll get that running. I'll get called into my own show because that's how it works. Everything's in the cloud, including the call-in lines. We'll get this running. And this says, dun, dun, dun.
Thank you for calling.
Well, you're welcome. And I'm going to type in my thing here, which you're not asking me for, but I know you're going to ask anyway.
Enter your 6-digit PIN.
All right. There's that PIN number again. Hopefully I can remember it and type it in with my mouse. Lady says,
welcome, Professor Messer.
Well, thank you, nice lady. It was nice of you to welcome me. That means that you are also welcome to call in. If you're calling in from the continental United States, it's a toll-free number, 855-785-RJ45. You can also call in west of the Rockies, 855-785-7545, and call in as well. If you're outside of the continental United States, you can call in using Skype. Skype is free for calling a toll-free number. You just put a +1 at the beginning, +1 855-785-7545, and you can call in. All the phone lines are chockers right now, however. You'll get a busy signal at the moment, but some of you will be able to call in and have this here. So that would at least configure some of those things. Do you know virtual memory settings can be configured with group policy? Absolutely. Yeah, you can set that up so the users can't go in and change everything around, which is also a pretty important thing. Group policy allows you to configure practically every aspect of the Windows operating system, control it, manage it from one place, manage thousands and thousands and thousands of computers with one person clicking buttons on their screen, which is probably the reason Windows has become so incredibly popular. It's a functionality that simply is not as well done in Mac OS or Linux. And they gotta fix that if they ever want to compete. I think that's the real game changer, isn't it? It's the entire domain that's there, not just the global policies or the group policies, but also the entire Active Directory mechanism is just very, very strong to have that there. Could I make Quizlet sets for 1001 and 1002? I have questions on my website at professormesser.com/take10. There's plenty of questions there for you already. You don't even need Quizlet, and I certainly don't. Let's go to the phone lines, though, and let's go to the 512 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey there, Professor Messer and everybody. This is Annie. I'm calling from Austin, Texas, and I just wanted to, thank you for your amazing, I'm not sure if they were Black Friday or Christmas deals, but where you buy the bundle for the 1001 and then you get the 1002 for half price. And I got all 4 bundles, and they're amazing.
Well,
and
thank
I wanted
you.
to just thank you. You're like the best thing that ever happened to my career. I probably owe you like half my salary, but
oh, if only. I have a feeling, though, that you did the
Right.
hard part. So I think you get to keep all of that.
Oh, thank you. I was just looking at, I think, the CompTIA website or somewhere where it said Cloud Plus, and I was wondering if you might include that anytime soon.
Well, the last person who asked me about Cloud Plus was just a couple of days ago, and I told them that Cloud Plus is not very high on my list right now because I only get questions about it once every 6 months or so. And since they asked, 2 other people have asked me in the last 2 days, including yourself. So I have a feeling I better revisit that to see if that's something that's going to be worthwhile. Obviously, cloud technologies, cloud computing, management of the cloud, security in the cloud, it is such a priority right now. Every company is in the cloud. Every company wants to be better about what they're doing in the cloud. There are opportunities to enhance and make the cloud work better in almost every situation. And there's just not enough people that are well trained in the nuances to be able to have jobs everywhere. So it's one of those things where I don't know if Cloud Plus is the right answer or if it's another cloud-based certification, but it has made me over the end of the year here take a step back and think more about these relatively new and, if you would, non-traditional certifications and see if it would make sense to do one. I appreciate you asking because it's another one of those data points I can use to say, well, somebody's looking at it, somebody's interested in it, it's piquing the interest of someone, so maybe I should start looking at it a little bit better as well.
Yeah, thanks. And then I did get those deals with the 1001 at full price and the 1002 for half price for the bundles. Was that just for Black Friday? Because I have a friend who I know would love to get those bundles as well. Have you extended those deals throughout Christmas?
I tend to, on my website, not have deals that are a short time thing. I am, as much as I can appreciate a good deal, I don't like it when some people are able to get a better deal than others. I feel like it's almost unfair to everybody. And so when I configure one of these bundles together, like my Core 1 and Core 2, the Core 1 digital deal's $99, the Core 2 is $99. But if you buy them together, it's $148. You get like $50 off by buying them together. I just make them a permanent deal. I feel like it's better off if everybody gets access to the deal. It's not expiring. You don't have to get there at a certain time of the day. You don't have to connect with it incognito just so you get a good deal. These ridiculous things that you have to do on other websites just to be able to get the proper amount of charge for what they're really trying to sell to you ultimately is sometimes very humorous to watch. So I just don't participate in that. I prefer to set up a pricing model that I think is fair on an individual basis. But if you're somebody who wants to buy more things, then I should give you a little bit of a benefit. If you, instead of buying course notes and practice exams and paying individually, let's give you a discount if you buy them together. To me, that just makes sense. So that's why I price them that way. So they're not going away. They're going to stay there. I just keep them the way they are. Occasionally, I would say usually at the end of the year, somewhere within the year, there are times when the prices do change, but when they change permanently. They're not ever a situation where anything is at a certain amount of time or a short period of time. So as much as I sort of want to participate in the Black Friday thing and here's a holiday deal, I feel bad when it's not there anymore. So I just don't tend to do it at all. And I tend to make it so everybody gets the same low price, if you will, all the way through the year. That's my perspective. Whether I'm able to maintain that or not, we'll find out. Doing business is a weird thing on the internet. Who knows where things will change? But so far, it's working okay.
Oh, wonderful. Excuse me. One more thing is that all my classmates and my instructors and the faculty and staff, they all just think the world of you, and they couldn't recommend you highly enough. And I mean, obviously, I have to tell you that, hands down, you're better than all of my instructors and professors combined together.
Well, I appreciate that. I will not tell them you said this. It's all just between me and you. Nobody else heard it. It's just a little thing that we're talking about. I appreciate that. It's very kind. I have the luxury, though, of turning on the camera and doing the same thing 6 or 7 times in a row, maybe 4 times in a row. And then I get to pick out the best one, and that's the one I put online. So your instructors who are there live in front of you don't have that luxury. They just, whatever comes out the first time, that's what they go with. I get to find the exact perfect way to say it in my mind and put that on a video and post that on the internet. So I'm spoiled in a little bit of a way with that, but I do appreciate the thought, and I do appreciate the nice words. They are very motivating.
Yeah, and I also just wanted to wish you happy holidays.
Thank you so much. Same to you, and thank you for the call, and best of luck with all of those studies that you have in front of you.
Thanks, Professor. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Annie. One of the things that motivates me and keeps me going is the fact that there are people that send me messages that say, I use this, I got my certification, and it changed the direction of my life. And that's what we wanted to do here. When we started doing this, we thought, why when people take their computers to a computer repair place, why are they coming back to them not repaired? And we thought about it and realized there's not a lot of good resources on the internet to get trained on these things. You have to pay, at the time, you had to pay thousands of dollars for a training class just to learn these things. And I thought, well, is it possible just to put out a course? YouTube at the time didn't even exist. I put the first course out on blip.io, which does not exist any longer. And just put it out there. Could this be something that could be a win-win? Can I make free content and put it on the internet and have people learn and get their certification from it? Because I was already in IT, already knew what the value of certifications was, already knew that employers like these certifications. So can I get other people to get these certifications? Can they get a job, or can they get a better job by me putting this content out? But then how does it work the other direction? Because the kids, they always want food, they want clothing, and they want shelter. So how can I make it into a viable business as well? So the internet's a weird place, and you have to find the right mix for those things. And it turned out okay. It's worked all right. And you're very good at telling me this is working, this is not working. And we've tried a lot of things that have worked. We've tried a lot of things that haven't worked so good. And we just constantly keep changing it and molding it and trying to make it work best for everyone to have all of those things there. Before we go back to the phones, question in the chat room, will I cover performance-based questions in my Security 601 course? Well, my newer practice exams book that is currently in the works now for the 601 certainly will. And future study groups probably will start with the 601 study groups in January. So starting in January, the 601 study groups will certainly, at the very first question of every study group, is a performance-based question. So those will be covered in there as well. So we'll get those. What's the difference between the audio courses on my website versus the videos on YouTube? Nothing. They're identical. But the YouTube ones you can't download. The YouTube ones aren't audio that you could put on a mobile device and take on a plane and take to the gym. You have to be connected to the internet. So that's they're exactly the same. They're just something you can download and take with you. That's the difference. Back to the phones. Thank you for holding for so long. The 520 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller. Are you there? Check your mute button, caller, in the 520 area code. Hi, are you there, caller?
Yes, my name is Sean. I'm calling from Arizona.
Hey, Sean. Thanks for calling.
Thanks. So I'm at the tail end of my cybersecurity bachelor's degree, and I think there are about 5 CompTIA-related certifications that I have to do, and I've completed a few of them thanks to your courses. But the one that you don't have is CYSA, so I wanted to know if you planned on adding that hopefully before May when my term is up.
I don't know if it will be before May because a lot of things are going on right now with CompTIA and updates, but there is certainly a large number of people who are asking me about CySa Plus these days. CySa Plus was introduced, I don't know, 5 years ago. It was quite a while back. 5 or so. I think it just updated in the second version about a year ago. So it has to be about 4 years. And when it came out, there was practically nobody asking for it. Now I'm getting a lot more people asking about it. And as I've mentioned on other study groups, it is a security-related certification. It's a logical next step. If you've taken Security Plus, it's the next logical one that you would probably take. And it's right in my wheelhouse because my last full-time job for someone else was as a security systems engineer. So all of those things that are in CySa are things I used every day. It was the Nmaps and the Wiresharks and the plugging in the firewall and configuring the NAT and making sure the IPsec VPNs were working and configuring all these different settings. There's a lot there. So it is a very natural next step, but I have not decided yet what it's going to be. I have to get through Security Plus first. I know that Network Plus will be updated at the end of the year coming up. So there will be a little gap in between. I'm just not sure what to do with it yet. Maybe it will be CySa, maybe it won't. But I would love to get something else out, whether it's a course, practice exams, course notes, or something that people would be able to use. And CySa Plus is certainly near the top of my list for sure. And your phone calls, when people call in about these things, as I mentioned earlier, it's one of those where, yeah, I do like to say more people are asking about it today than they ever have. So that certainly helps as well. That might sway me a little bit, Sean.
Awesome. Thank you.
I appreciate the call, and thanks for the recommendation. Best of luck with those 5 certifications, too.
Thanks. I have a Sec Plus this weekend, so fingers crossed.
Excellent. Best of luck. That's one of those, I think, if you ever get into the situation where you're going through, and I love the idea that, by the way, that here is a formal degree that at the end of it also requires you to get certifications. Somebody there knows that there's a connection there, that a formal degree doesn't replace certs, and the certs don't replace a formal degree. So somebody there definitely has that. Yeah, if you're calling in, you're getting a busy signal. That's because we are full. There is a maximum number that we're able to keep there at a certain time. But just as soon as I hang up with somebody, that's when somebody opens up. And we do have a couple of slots open in the queue. I have one slot open in the queue if you wanted to call in. There are some folks who have been holding for an awfully long time just up the road from me in Alabama, 334. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm Dylan. I'm actually in Maryland. I used to live in the Florida, Alabama area, but moved up here for school.
Excellent. Well, what can we do for you?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for everything you do. I just passed A+ Part 1 yesterday.
Nice. How did that go? Did you take it at home or did you take it at a testing center?
I took it at home. I wasn't too sure about some of the testing centers around here, especially with what's going on.
Sure.
Ramping up a little bit in my area.
Well, that's great. Congratulations.
And I do think I appreciate it. I do think it probably would have been easier at a testing center because my dog in the other room barking kind of threw me off a little bit. But
I understand.
I just Right. I just wanted to ask and get a little bit of input for how you because if I'm not mistaken, you did do hiring or were a part of the hiring process at one point.
That's correct.
How a lot of job employers look at, I guess for lack of a better term, less traditional college experiences. For instance, I'm in WGU right now, and I know a lot of people, at least online, look at it and go, oh, that's more of a cert farm, basically. I just wanted to see if you had any insight on that.
I do. I was, for those of you that don't know or haven't looked at my LinkedIn, or I don't even know if it's on my LinkedIn at this point, but I did work for a short period of time as a systems engineering manager. I guess it was a year or so, until they realized either that I wasn't good at it, or I realized I wasn't good at it. One of those things happened, and I stopped being a systems engineering manager anymore. But even when you're not an SE manager, I worked for a very long time in the industry as a senior systems engineer. Very often the manager asks people, can you interview this person on the phone? Give them a once over, see if they're worth talking to, and bringing in for a face-to-face, that kind of thing. So I've probably done probably not hundreds of interviews, but maybe 100 interviews of different kinds, probably more than that now that I think about it, if you count all the phone calls. It probably is well over 100, and gone through probably thousands of resumes of some kind. And it's never, ever one particular thing. People tend to focus on one aspect of a resume and think that that is the most important thing and nothing else matters. And if you were to lay them out, and I have that video that I created, which is how to get a job in IT with no experience. That's on my YouTube channel. And I go through 4 elements, and I think all 4 of them are very important. You have to have a formal degree, because most employers ask for a formal degree. You have to have some type of certification, because most employers ask for a certification. There's a reason for that. You have to be able to have some practical experience. And that's the thing I think a lot of people say, that's the only thing that matters is your experience. Well, that's not entirely true either. And then lastly is, it's useful if you know somebody who already works there. Those are the 4 elements. Those are the 4 things that I have found make the biggest difference when you go in for a job. Now, not everybody has all 4 of those. In fact, very few people, when you're starting out, have all 4 of those. You might have 3 of them. You might have 2 of them. Sometimes you have 1 of them. But it helps if you can kind of mix and match, or if you don't have one, you can add to one of the others and make it seem much bigger, or be much bigger in that particular case. So those 4 things is where I tell people to focus their efforts. I think when you're coming from a traditional university, there's practically no hands-on associated with that. You're never going to come out of a practical, for the most part, you rarely come out of a traditional university with a technical degree that allows you to understand how to manage a Cisco switch and router network. You just don't. There are some that do teach you this now. They're slowly starting to add this to their curriculum, but the vast majority of universities, of 4-year colleges and universities, don't give you a practical knowledge of IT. And I think that's where the difference is with places like WGU and other schools that are focused on this, is that it's a degree that has a practicality to it. And so if you're going to talk to an employer and you're coming out of WGU, you're not going to talk about your time spent at the fraternity and the things you did as a fraternity treasurer. You're not going to talk about the things you did on campus because you didn't go to one. You're going to talk more about the skills that you have and what you have done with those skills so far. You're going to talk about the Active Directory infrastructure you built in your lab. You're going to talk about the work you did to remove some viruses on a friend's network. You're going to talk about the firewall and intrusion prevention system you put in that is running in your own home, and the things you caught with it and what you found people trying to attack you with. Those are more practical things you can explain to somebody in an interview that you should leverage. You should lean on what you learn with WGU. The same way I would when I came out of my 4-year university with my management degree, I was leaning on the business side of things. And I leaned on a little bit of the time I spent working in operations in the supercomputer center. So I tried to lean on those were the things that I knew about, that if somebody wanted to talk to me and have a conversation about those skills, I could have a very good conversation with them. So it's going to be different depending on who walks in the door. I've interviewed people who have walked in the door who have said on their resume that they knew everything there was to know about Cisco, everything there was to know about their routers and their switches. And I wanted to start a Cisco conversation with them. And one of the very common questions we would always ask at the very beginning was, tell me everything you know about ARP, the address resolution protocol. Tell me everything you know about ARP. And they go, well, I would use it sometimes when we do things, and it works pretty good. Like that was your answer. You just said nothing about ARP. You said that was your answer to say I know nothing about ARP. Okay, well let's go to the next question then, because you knew nothing about this, and immediately you started ticking off. Nope, this isn't going to work out. Like, how did their resume look that good? And the practical side of things, they didn't know anything. I wasn't expecting them to give me the RFC breakdown of reverse ARP and proxy ARP, or even go into the details of that. Just tell me anything about it. How about the ARP utility? How about what it tells you? How about what you do with it? Those are things that it's surprising when you're interviewing people what comes out of that. More often than not, I just want to have a technical conversation with you. Let's find something you know about, and now let's talk about it at a technical level. Give me an understanding that you've really brought this information into your brain. You've shifted it around. You've worked with it a little bit. You've seen some things. You're able to communicate to me that you've seen these things. You're able to have a conversation about it, because a lot of people, I think, worry that a technical job means that you have to be 100% technical. The reality is, the more personable you are along with your technical, the more marketable you are to an employer. So don't worry so much about what you don't know. Focus on what you do know, and focus on being able to talk to somebody at a very detailed level about the things you know about and about the things you love to do, and let the interview go where it goes. If you're a good fit, they'll hire you. If you're not a good fit, it's better off that they didn't anyway. Just go to the next one. Pretend it's a dating situation. Just be ready for rejection, and just go through as many of those environments and situations as you can until you find the right hook. It's one of those weird situations where it's rejection after depression, after heavy drinking, after am I ever going to get a job? And then what? You want to hire me? Wow. Okay, fantastic. Suddenly the world changes. Like it's awful until the second it's not anymore. Just keep doing it. Just keep going. Just keep going through the rejection and going through the interviews. Someone eventually will go, yeah, we'll hire you. That sounds good. Let's do this. And then everything changes. So you're only a failure if you stop. Just keep going through it and keep doing it. You already know the content. You're already going through WGU. You're already getting the certifications. Why not take advantage of those? Just prepare for the interview. Just have the stories, have the things that you've done, collect them into a pile, put them in your brain, index cards, whatever works for you, and just be ready to share those things with somebody else, and you'll do fine.
Gotcha. Well, I really do appreciate it. I appreciate everything you do. It's funny. The only resource I didn't use from you about the test was how the questions were asked. I used other resources that I had, and that was the thing that tripped me up the most. Was I don't think I prepared enough with the right kind of questions. So I literally just bought your questions on the part 2, and I'm going to go through those as soon as I'm ready for it.
Perfect. I think that's it's almost I tell other people it's almost a reading comprehension test as much as it is a test on your technical knowledge. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's better if you're prepared for it than not be. So best of luck.
All right. Thank you so much.
Appreciate the call. That's one of those weird things about it, though, is, and I know we've even had people complaining about that, and rightly so in the chat today, is that these exams, the questions, I haven't really found the questions, though, on the A+ exams, really any of the most recent CompTIA exams, to be that crazy. They're all very well laid out. They are grammatically correct. They are very focused on what you need to know. They're asking a specific question, and the specific answer is usually in the answers, and it's very clear what the right answer is if you know it. I think a lot of people that get wrapped around the questions are people that maybe have gone into the exam and they hit a topic that they weren't very sure about, and to them, it was a bad question, but the reality was, had they known the content, the answer would have jumped out at them. So don't worry about this. I had somebody tell me recently, maybe yesterday it was, that said, I went through all of your practice exams. I've done very well on them. I've learned a lot from those books, but I'm afraid to take the exam because of what other people have said the questions were like. But you know the content. If you know the content, don't worry about it. The questions are not going to be a problem for you. I think the questions are a problem for people that don't understand PII. What's PII? Well, this question's ridiculous. So that's what you run into. I think that's what we're seeing. I may be wrong. It may just be that's the case, but I haven't found their questions on these exams to be ridiculous or weirdly written or trick question. They're not like that at all. They're good questions. I'm sorry for banging my microphone. Let's go Tampa, who is it's John who's called before. Thanks for holding for so long, John. What can we do for you today?
Yes. Well, I got a question on, I'm taking this exam on the 21st, but that Security Plus exam, I want to take the old one.
Yeah.
I mean, the old one that still exists. And I called them up and I said, when's the expiration on that? And they said, July 21. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, geez, I don't work in the industry right now, and this stuff's taking, a little longer in my studying than I thought it would. So would it be crazy to go after passing this second A+ exam to jump right into Security Plus and then go back to Network Plus? Is that going to be a mistake doing that? I
don't think it's a mistake at all. There is about 11% of the content on those two exams overlaps with each other. So there's not a lot of overlap. The Venn diagram of those two exams, people say there's so much that's the same. There really isn't. There's very little that is the same between those two exams. And in fact, the number of people that come to my site are people from the DC area, Virginia, Maryland area, where Security Plus is the primary certification in that particular geography because of the jobs that are in that particular area. They start with Security Plus. That's their first certification in IT is Security Plus, and rightly so if you happen to live and work in that particular area. So not a huge jump to do that at all. You're absolutely right. It's July 31st that they're going to keep that 501 exam through. So they're giving a huge ramp. Used to be a 6-month overlap, and I think with everything going on with testing centers and COVID and everything else, they've given us a 9-month overlap, which is fantastic. For the people that aren't familiar, the SY0601 is a brand new version of the Security Plus exam that was released earlier in December. There's an SY0501 exam that has been around for 3 years that will continue to be around for another 6 months. So you can choose which one you want to take right now. You can take the 501 exam or you can take the 601 exam. It doesn't matter which one you take. When you pass one of those exams, you earn the same Security Plus certification. Certifications aren't numbered. It's just you either have a Security Plus or you don't have a Security Plus. So if you pass either of those exams, you have a Security Plus. And most people who earn their Security Plus certification aren't going to ever take the exam again anyway. You're just going to renew it every 3 years to do this. I would tell you also, if you've seen some of my Security Plus videos and some of the things where I've talked about this new exam, the 601, 33% new exam objectives, additional exam objectives over the 501. It's a much bigger exam, much larger, a third larger. It was already big. Now it's super big. It's like a third larger set of exam. I don't think it's more difficult. I don't think the content is harder. I think there's just more of it, and therefore you have to cram more into your brain if you're planning to take the 601. I also want to make sure that everybody understands it's 33% larger, but half of the material's brand new. So they took 50% of the old 501, they got rid of a lot of that and created all 50% new content, of which 33% of that's larger than it's ever been before. So it's a for someone who creates the content, I basically had to write a new exam, a set of exam questions and knew everything, because they didn't just change one thing. They sort of updated every topic in the exam. So, which is good. I like that it's up to date and they updated those things. I get it. But if you're somebody who needs this certification, why wouldn't you take the 501 right now? It's smaller. There are tons of books and content available. There's maybe one book available for the 601 right now, maybe another one in January, and I think a couple more in March. It takes months to publish content for these. I'm still working on my Security Plus videos. It takes a long time to get these things rolled out because we just got the exam objectives only a couple months ago. So that's one of those where you can do it the hard way with the new exam, or you could do it the easy way with the exam with all the resources that have been around forever. That's my recommendation, is if you can get it done by July 31st, take the 501, earn your Security Plus certification, put it on your resume, and just keep it moving. The employers don't care which exam you took as long as you passed it and earn your Security Plus certification.
In regards to your materials on the 501, since that's the one I want to take and I'm going to take, is to guarantee that I'm buying your information that's only on 501 and doesn't have any 601 mixed in with it. I should order this right now then, correct?
I don't mix and match either of these. I've seen some publishers of material create kind of a conglomeration of courses where some of the course is 501 content, some of the course is 601 content, and they kind of blend everything together. That doesn't make sense to me because you're not taking an exam that's blended together. You're taking an exam based on a very specific set of exam objectives. And so anything on my site that says SY0501 is only for the SY0501. It will always only be for the SY0501. It will never be for the SY0601. I'm creating an entirely separate course that is completely focused on the SY0601 that has only SY0601 content on it, and it does not have content that would blend together with any other thing. And that's because most people, all people, are working towards taking a particular version of the exam. So I think all of your study materials should be very focused on that version of the exam. The disadvantage from my perspective, of course, is on July 31st, all that 501 content that I created becomes worthless because nobody can take that anymore. But the idea is that by then I'll have all of my 601 content out and people will be able to use that. So no, if you buy anything from me that says 501 on it, it is only for the 501. It's very specifically written for the 501. It is optimized for the 501 exam. If you're taking the 601, I have some 601 course notes that are already available. I'm working on 601 videos. There will be a 601 practice exam coming out after the beginning of the year, but that's the one you will want if you're taking the 601. So you at least know when you're getting my content, it is very focused and very specific to the exam version.
Are they, just the one last quick question.
Sure.
So if you go from A plus and then you take Security Plus, would they expect you to go back and have that Network Plus then? I have no problem doing that.
Well, from my perspective,
What's your opinion on that?
The first CompTIA certification I earned was my Security Plus. Then I took the Network Plus. Then I took the A Plus. I went exactly backwards, I guess, to what they say you should do. The people that would want you to go back to Network Plus, I'm assuming, are potential employers. And I guess that's really more of a question for the employers. Are employers looking for the Network Plus? If so, maybe you do go back and take the Network Plus. If the employers are looking for Security Plus, then you already have it. You're sort of moving that direction. It's really up to whatever you want to be able to do in your career. The employers don't care so much in the order you did it as long as you have that knowledge in your brain.
Sure. Okay. Well, Thank you very much. That helped a lot.
Well, I think your strategy is a pretty good one. I think everybody, if they're interested in Security Plus, should really make a decision on whether they want to get that certification before the 501 is retired in July, at the end of July, because it will be easier than waiting and taking the 601. You know, if you miss it, though, it's not like it's twice as hard to earn the 601. It's incrementally more difficult. But if it's going to be more difficult, why wouldn't you take the easier one right now? So that's my perspective of it. I realize there are people, and I've talked with people that says, I don't care what you say, I'm going to take the 601 just because I want to. Okay, well, that's fine too, but just make sure you have all the right resources available so that's as successful as you can be when you sit down and take it.
Great. Thank you.
Best of luck, John.
Yep. Thank you.
That's one of those things that really is sometimes a personal preference. I can tell people all day, you really need to take the 501. 501 is so much easier. You probably should take the 501. Yeah, I'm going to take 601. Okay, well, that's fine too. That's fine. And I understand why. Some people feel that it's a newer exam. The content is a little fresher. There are other topics on there that they think they would like to learn about. That's a perfectly reasonable reason to take the newer exam. Just be aware that there's fewer resources available to study from. That's always the challenge when they first introduce a new CompTIA exam. That's always the challenge. So that's one of the things you just have to do. It's a harder exam. I don't know why you do it. I do not know. Even after all of that, why don't you just take the easier exam and then go learn the things that are newer on the new? Maybe that's the way. It doesn't matter. I can make the reasons why, but there we go. Let's go to Anonymous. Hello, Anonymous. Thanks for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, I'm calling from Ottawa, Canada. I guess it's the Skype that's showing Anonymous.
That's quite all right. I will let the Mrs. Professor Messer know that Canada has checked in. So I appreciate your call. What can we do for you?
Perfect. That's more of a networking question if your kind of thoughts on it. I have an edge firewall from Fortinet, and it's going to connect to an internal firewall from Fortinet, and then a switch by Fortinet. For VLANs, the whole idea of VLAN 1 and the native VLAN, typically I'd want to do is make sure that plug in my workstations, of course, into the switch shouldn't have the native VLAN of 1 tagged on, the workstations. Is that typically the best practice for the native VLAN, just to make sure, of course, none of my workstations have that tagged?
Well, there's a couple things to think about. So is this for kind of an internal set of networks that you're running at home? Is this one for a company? And what is the purpose for the VLANs? Are you planning to have different VLANs for different purposes within the network?
Yep, I have a VLAN for the user's workstation, a VLAN for the servers connected by VMware, the hypervisor,
yep,
and a VLAN for wireless. So I have a few different VLANs to kind of segregate the network.
Perfect. The idea behind VLANs is exactly the way you've set it up. In fact, I have a lot of VLANs set up here at my studios. I have a home network. I have a studio network. I have a separate VLAN for security cameras because they're awful chatty and they make a lot of noise. So I put them on their own VLAN. I have a separate VLAN for my audio network because my the audio system I have has its own Ethernet connection and communicates back and forth with some other additional audio equipment. So those are on their own VLAN. So everybody's separated. The native VLAN on a system is there for a couple of purposes. Now, if you ever start working with trunking these things through a connection, and it didn't sound like there was any trunking going on, but are you planning to do any trunking on this network?
If I plug in one firewall, the edge firewall, to the internal firewall, and then that internal firewall to a switch, I guess is that considered still trunking, right? I guess the firewall has a built-in switch, I guess, on the Fortinet. So
it probably does on the Fortinet side. I'm slightly familiar with the Fortinet. It's very similar to some of the operations and other firewalls I worked with before, and having those there. And you may need to, if you are sending a single trunk through, if you're single connection between those two, and of course want to have all of those VLANs going through and sending that information back and forth between those two devices. There's the native VLAN, you mentioned earlier the native VLAN, being able to work through the native VLAN configuration. So if you are tagging this information, normally the information to the connection to your individual end stations that you're plugging in, those are untagged connections. Those are just one device is on a single VLAN. You plug it in. There's no trunking. There's no tagging. You're simply sending standard Ethernet back and forth between a user's workstation and the switch connection. But when you start needing to connect switches to switches, especially, it's very commonplace to start trunking, or in your case, firewalls to firewalls, another great place to be trunking, then you're going to need to tell the switches, there are a bunch of VLANs that are going to be sharing this. We're going to put VLAN 7, 8, 9, and 10 on this particular connection, and we're going to send all that traffic back and forth, tag it as it goes through, and on the other side, take the tag off and send it off to its proper place if we're going to be doing that. It may not, in your particular configuration, be doing tagging. You may just be routing everything at that point. You may be natting and routing out that connection. But if you ever look at the configuration for the VLANs, there's that native VLAN configuration, because there will be one VLAN on that trunk that does not get tagged. There will be one VLAN that sends information back and forth over that connection that you will never put a tag on, send it across, and then untag it on the other side. That is the native VLAN. It's very commonly used to send management information back and forth, because management information just sort of switch to switch, talking to each other, is the native VLAN. In some networks, they will put users on the native VLAN. It's not best practice. Normally, you have users on their own individual VLAN. Then you would make sure that data is trunked across. But you could if you wanted to. It's just not a best practice. I think that's a very common configuration between them, and maybe that will work fine for yours. It's almost a case where we need to do a whiteboard of what the external VLAN is set, what the external firewall is set to, why there is an internal firewall, what the internal firewall is doing, how the switch configuration is set up. There's a big, much larger conversation to have along those lines, but it sounds like you're heading the right direction. It sounds like your thought process of splitting everybody into separate VLANs, trunking those VLANs across to the other switch is probably going to be the best way to approach that.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Another just quick question on theory. DHCP. Right now, I have the VMware hypervisor, and DHCP is in its own VM. I can run a DHCP server, of course, on the switch if I put it to more of the layer 3 function, or a DHCP, of course, on the firewall, setting the IP address to the switch. Is there kind of a better practice to have your DHCP server maybe stay on the Windows VM versus on the switch itself? Or is that more just preference at the end?
In some cases, it's preference. In some cases, it's functionality. It may be, I've run into situations where certain firewalls, the DHCP service in that firewall did not have the capability to turn on things like DHCP options. That's an extended functionality of DHCP that allows you to include additional parameters as part of DHCP. We often think of DHCP as just assigning IP address, subnet mask, default gateway, and it's kind of done. Maybe the DNS settings. But on larger networks, especially those that have voice over IP phones, there is a functionality where you might want to send the phone during its DHCP process the IP address of the controller, of the voice controller that it needs to connect to. Well, that means you have to turn on additional functionality in DHCP called DHCP options to be able to do that. And sometimes you will run across different DHCP servers. Some of them might support that functionality. Some of them won't support that functionality, and that might make the decision for you. It might also be a management feature. With Windows, there are so many different DHCP management functions. It's very easy to get support for it. So many people have used it that it may be easier to use just because from a support perspective, it's easier. And you may find some people, though, like to have it close to the users. Let's take it off of the operating system like Windows. Let's take it off of anything that people would connect to. Let's put it inside of our firewall, which we consider to be a relatively secure device. If our firewall goes down, DHCP is the least of our problems at that point. It's probably, you don't have to worry about DHCP. And some people like putting it in the firewall for that reason. Sometimes it becomes more of a I don't want to say a political problem, but it often does. You go into some environments where if it's on a Windows machine, it is in the purview of the Windows administration team. If it's inside the firewall, it's a security feature and it's the responsibility of the security team. If the security team wants to put DHCP services on a Windows machine, now they have to hand over some of that control to a different group, which is maybe not necessarily the focus of the security team. So even though you would like to make it a technical answer, sometimes it is much a political answer as it is a technical one. Whether that's good or bad, that's really up to you.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
I appreciate the call. Thanks for calling. Whenever you start getting into technical configurations, and this is something I used to do whenever I was a systems engineer, we would walk in, somebody would say, we have this problem we're having. Here's what we would like to be able to do. Here's the problem, the issue that we're having on our network with security or with control or with visibility. How can we fix this? And I would say, well, let's go down a list. Let's make some drawings on the whiteboard. How do you do this in your network? What is your style? Where is this thing configured? How is the management of this handled internally? What's better for you? Do we do it like this or do it like this? And you go through a series of questions where you build out a configuration that makes sense for their particular technical requirements and in some cases political requirements. So you kind of have to be able to tap dance around that a lot when you work in technology, because it's not always, you're not always designing the best technically correct answer. You're also designing the best politically correct answer for the environment you happen to work in, for better or worse. That's just the scenario you're there with. One of the people I used to work with told me very rightly, said, there will always be politics. You will always, always, always have these politics in the office. The real key is how you work with those. So he was explaining to me, because I was very headstrong at the time, and explained to me, stop hitting the politics with your head every time you walk into the room. They're not going to change. You need to figure out how to roll with it. And that was great advice, I think, to have that. Back to the phones. Thank you for holding for so long. 858 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Lee. I'm calling from San Diego.
Oh, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yeah, no problem. First, I just want to thank you for all what you do for us. I really appreciate it.
Quite welcome.
You do a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. You're welcome, sir. So I have a couple of questions. One is, so I don't have, so my brother got me into IT. I didn't have a lot of knowledge about IT. So he told me CompTIA Plus, which I did, and I got my Network Plus, so studying your material and your exam notes and some other material.
Great.
So my question is, like, what's the, like, so he told me to take the CCNA, but I'm also wanted to get into security. So do I need to take the CCNA? Because I was looking at the material that's very similar to a Network Plus. So what's your advice, or like, yeah, what do you think?
This is probably one of the top 3 questions I get in during the week always, which is, here's a Network Plus, here's the Cisco CCNA, what do I do? Do I take them? In fact, if you ask this online in any of the Reddit forums, there will be people that will say, well, of course you take the Network Plus. That's the entry-level certification. And there will be other people that say, why would you ever take the Network Plus? Of course you would take the CCNA. That's the one that will take you the farthest to do what you need to do. And the problem is that both of them are correct, that both of those exams have a place depending on what you need to be able to do. I will say the Network Plus, just so we're clear on positioning, the Network Plus is an exam that is designed as an entry-level networking exam. It is designed to focus you on understanding the nomenclature, the job responsibilities of a network administrator, the core infrastructure, equipment, and where they would go. It's really to give you an overview. It's an entry-level certification. The CCNA is not an entry-level certification in any way. People will sometimes try to explain that it is. Those people are incorrect. It is not an entry-level certification in any way, shape, or form. The CCNA is designed to be that second level of type of certification that goes into a lot of detail about the way the protocols operate, about understanding how to configure, set up, maintain, recover, backup, and otherwise manage a Cisco switched and Cisco routed network. This is usually involves extensive lab work, configurations of either physical or virtual systems, lots of command lines that you have to do, lots of thinking and troubleshooting and configuring and looking and examining and going to the next steps. It is an extremely difficult exam for someone who has never touched this equipment before, and it has quite a long ramp to be able to earn your CCNA. Now, at the end of that, it's hard to argue with the people that say the CCNA is going to take you farther. Of course it is. It is a higher level certification exam with a higher level certification that you would earn. But I always tell people when they say, well, of course you take the CCNA. I say, why are you taking the CCNA? You should go get your CCIE, a certification that was the top layer of Cisco, that is someone who's been working in the industry for 10 years, that has an expertise in everything there is to know about switching and routing, is the CCNA. When they say, well, of course I wouldn't do that. I haven't even, you got to work up to that. I'm like, yes, that's the right answer. You have to work up to that. And that's why I tell people that you probably wouldn't jump into the CCNA unless you are really prepared to spend the extra time on the front end really understanding the fundamentals. And there is a great deal of fundamentals they teach you on the CCNA, but you're going to have to now learn that from the very beginning if that's where you start. And it's going to take you longer to earn your CCNA than someone who's already gone through the Network Plus and has already got the fundamentals. And effectively, when they hit the CCNA, they can kind of jump right into the command line and start configuring things. That's the difference. The big goal I try to tell people is find the one that fits for what you want to do. If you're somebody you want to be a network administrator, you want to manage switches, you want to manage routers, and you want to do it as fast as possible, and you're looking at that like, I really like the amount of money they make every year, I like the job that they have, I like this technology, I like the protocols, I like the network, then starting with the CCNA may make more sense for you. Just be aware that you're going to have to start at the bottom and really understand those fundamentals going forward. If you're somebody, though, who you're trying to get into IT, you would like maybe a help desk position, you're not necessarily jumping or wanting to jump into network management right away, and there are some jobs available in your area where employers are looking for A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, then Network Plus is probably a better fit for you. Nobody is going to hire someone for a Cisco CCNA type job as an entry-level job. It's not an entry-level job. They're going to want to start you on the help desk and then move into that later on. So if you're going to start in the help desk anyway, Network Plus is probably going to be the better choice for you. But it's like anything else I always tell people, there's always a different path. Some people take this path, some people take that path. Very often they even take you to the same place, but it's really going to be up to you, what resources you have, what knowledge you already have, and what you want that next step to be, whether it's help desk or network administration or whatever. Pick the thing that's going to get you there faster.
Perfect. So that makes a lot of sense. But so I don't know if I mentioned, but I already passed the Network Plus to CompTIA. So will it be ideal to take a CCNA, or I don't need it?
I think CCNA is a great next step after Network Plus. You've already got the fundamentals. You already understand some of these terms that are going to be thrown at you. For instance, in Network Plus, you learn all about why a network loop is bad. You understand how BPDU is used along with spanning tree to be able to prevent loops on the network. But what you haven't done yet is actually configure a switch for spanning tree and be able to see what happens inside of the switch when you configure it for spanning tree. So CCNA is the next natural step to be able to do those types of things. Now that you already understand the fundamentals, how do you implement those fundamentals? I think CCNA is a great next step after Network Plus.
Oh, okay, that's perfect. I think I will do that. So I know, sorry, I took too much of your time. I just have one quick question.
Sure.
The other one. So So actually, I already found a job, thankfully, with help desk supervisor. And so, like, one of the things we're doing, we're trying to provide help desk to, like, coffee shops. So, like, let's say if they're saying if there's a problem with the access point, so, like, let's say if it's seen the access point, but it's not connecting to the access point, or, like, if it's seen the access, I mean, it's not connecting to the internet. And then also, let's say if it's accessing the internet, but not certain pages. So, like, it won't access to a certain website. So, like, what could be the problem?
This is a great service, by the way, because the people who work in the coffee shop know nothing about the network. They don't want to know anything about the network. They want to make coffee, and they want to have you call someone else to manage the networking side of things. What you often find in those scenarios is a very stock configuration that is exactly the same at every single one of those coffee shops. It's one of those where they have specifically purchased exactly the same equipment, exactly the same networking gear, exactly the same configurations, and it's all installed and managed as just one single unit. And that way you're able to, and this is a great job to have, now you have a complete set of troubleshooting steps for each one of those things. And depending on the problem you run into, it's exactly the same troubleshooting in each one of those. You know that you've got DHCP running on this device. You know that you've got routing configurations here that you can manage. And you know that you've got a view into the internet so you can understand if the network is up and down. And they're usually tests that you're able to connect in and do from there. You're able to connect in and remotely log into the router. You can, from that router, run pings, run trace routes, look at the service status on the device, understand what type of traffic's going through it already, and then allow or disallow different traffic to go through from there. The process you would follow, the exact process you would follow for those situations would depend on the configuration for that particular coffee shop. But it's a great environment to kind of cut your teeth and understand a little bit more about how you can do some basic troubleshooting of connectivity, because that's really what you're doing. You're kind of providing the street. You're not managing applications. You're not configuring database servers. You're not setting up a web server. You're instead making sure the networking infrastructure is there, which is, as you mentioned earlier, the CCNA is perfect to roll right into that.
Perfect. That makes sense. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all you do, and I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks for your call. That's and congratulations on the job and congratulations on the certifications. I think the CCNA is probably a good next step for you. It sounds like that's exactly the type of thing you're working on right now. Why wouldn't you want to get that CCNA? In fact, I think your daily job will probably help you a little bit. Back to the phone lines. Let's go back to the phone. 708 area code. Hi, caller. Thanks for holding for so long. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Professor Messer. My name is Eric. I am basically calling to get your advice about, so first of all, let me back up. I'm a little older. I've been in IT for about 15, 16 years, and never really got any certifications at all. And right now I'm finding myself in a position where I have to obtain certifications. And excuse me for 1 second.
They eventually find you.
Sorry.
Oh, you don't have search yet? Well, we're gonna fix that.
Well, so my frustration is this, though. I have attempted the A+ exam, both 1001 and 1002, and have come up like short. And as a result of that, wasn't offered employment because of that, because it was conditional. So wanted to know, I'm just really frustrated. I've spent tons of money, probably thousands, on various trainings and things of that nature, and none of it seems to really help. What would you really suggest? Would you suggest actually attending a boot camp, or what would you suggest?
I very rarely recommend boot camps, at least the traditional term of a boot camp. For people that haven't heard of these before, they are usually 1 or 2 week camp training centers. You go for 1 or 2 weeks where it's 8 in the morning until sometimes 5 or 8 at night. It's like half day. And they run you through every possible thing you have to know for the certification exam. They cram it all in that 1 or 2 weeks. and then they sort of release you to go take the exam. The idea being, well, you just kind of got it all at once, and now you can go in with that knowledge and sort of pass the exam because it's stuck in your brain so recently. I don't find that particular method to work very well, primarily because there's no way you can learn everything you need to know for these exams in 1 or 2 weeks. It's just not physically possible. And secondly, if you know everything you need for these exams, or you know enough that you could keep up in an environment where it's 1 or 2 weeks for a boot camp, then you probably don't need the boot camp. It's probably a different scenario. I like the idea of in-person training. I think that's a perfectly reasonable way to get trained, especially since you can ask questions. If you really are in an environment like that, you have to take advantage of it. You have to be someone who asks the question or can work with other people and say, how do you do that? I'm not following you there. How does this work? And get someone to really step you through it. That's the real benefit. I find that community colleges is probably some of the best places to go right now because they have classes that are based on A+, Network+, Security+, or whatever it is. And the classes are for an extended period of time. They are 9-week classes. They are 12-week classes. They're an entire semester or during the summer, shortened time frames, but it's not 2 weeks. It's a more extended and relaxed way to learn this. Now, it takes longer, of course, to go through all of this material, but it's a structured environment. You're going either online with a group of people or in a classroom with a group of people. It's the same people every week. You can get those people now on a Discord. You can all talk together about the things you're doing. You can get the video up and running and say, here's what I'm seeing. What am I doing wrong with this? You can share the screens or remote desktop. Am I doing this part right? How should we configure this lab? There's some interactiveness that goes on, and I think a better learning environment when you have that. If that is an option, that is certainly something you should consider for this scenario. The other thing you might want to consider is maybe doing kind of a subset of that online. I know that the CompTIA subreddit has their own Discord. There's people in that Discord all the time that are getting together at night and going through questions. They are communicating with each other. They're collaborating with each other. They're trying to train with each other and learn what's on the exam. They are going through all of the reports that people put on the CompTIA subreddit where they describe, here's the testing environment I had. They're very particular not to give details, but they say, here's some things that we really think you should know before you walk into the exam. I think that's very great recon. That's great intel to have for somebody who's gone through the exam already. Those are also other places that if you can't go to a formal class, you can make an informal class yourself and kind of step through the exam objectives and learn what you need to learn that way. And the last thing I would probably say is to maybe do another evaluation. Do you have all the right resources? If you have a book, maybe you don't have the right book. Maybe it's a different book that works better for you. Every book that you see for A+ is written a different way, has a different voice, has a different style, and some styles might work better than others. And you may want to go to Amazon and read through a couple of different ones to see if you can find one that might read better for you. You already have some experience in the industry. You already know a lot of these terms. You already understand the nomenclature. Maybe it's more of how someone's explaining it to you that would make the big difference. And then if you've got a good book, you get some videos, whether mine or someone else's. Get plenty of hands-on. The labs, I think, go a long way into teaching you the things you learn in a book and the things you watch in a video in a way that's different, even though you may be doing exactly the same thing. If I do a ping in my video, you should be doing a ping on your workstation as well. And there's just something about the synapses that fire in your brain when you're typing it yourself that is different than the synapses in your brain when you're watching me type it. It's a different experience. It's a muscle memory. I don't know what it is, but it's different. Like you're making it happen and therefore it gets stuck in your brain a different way. That, I think, is really important that you get plenty of hands-on. And lastly is the Q&A. And you're probably at this point, if you've gone through the exams before, you're probably sick of Q&A. But it is a crucial part of this to give you some feedback on how well do you really know this content now that you've read the book, you've watched the video, you've done the hands-on. Do you really get it? Is it really in your brain? Have you really captured it the right way? And I think the more Q&A you can do, the better. The more diverse Q&A you can do, the better. A lot of Q&A from one place is not as good as smaller groups of Q&A from different places, because you will find a different quality of Q&A depending on where you go. Those are the 4 areas that I think most people should focus on. And it may be a good time to maybe do some auditing on your side to see if you really have everything you need to be able to have the best possible chance of passing the exam when you walk in the door.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And that sounds very succinct in you describing that. I've taken, I have a master's degree in cybersecurity. I have, of course, I have other education in IT. And like I said, I've, owned a business for 15 years and so forth, that I've done a lot of this stuff, but now it's a requirement to get in certain other arenas to be able to have gainful employment in this area. And it just seems like maybe because I'm older, maybe some of the information is escaping me a little bit more in terms of actually facing the questions. And so the other question I have is, would you happen to know how much weight the performance questions are on CompTIA exams?
Man, I wish I did. I would be able to be the king of answering this question if I did. There have been people that have talked on the CompTIA subreddit who have taken the exam, and they said, I know I bombed the performance-based questions. They said, there's no way I got those performance-based questions right, and I still passed the exam. There's been other people who said, I didn't pass the exam, and I'm almost certain it's because I didn't do well in the performance-based questions. So I'm not sure who to believe, or if they both might have been right, because we all know that it's a different grading for different questions on every exam. Both of them could have been right along those lines. I suspect, in my mind, it would be awfully cruel if bombing the performance-based questions completely disallowed the rest of your exam. Like, it was just ridiculous to be able to do anything with the rest of the exam, because that just doesn't make sense. But there's got to be some value to those exam questions, whatever they happen to be. So maybe there is some reality to that, but nobody knows. CompTIA doesn't share their grading. They don't talk about what those things are worth. They don't tell you if you get partial credit or not. They say maybe. So you're never quite sure. So I just don't have a good answer for you there. All I can really say is go through as many performance-based questions as you can. I do one every month on my study group. Go through as much matching, as much fill in the blank, as much drag and drop. Try to get as much intel from people who are taking the exam right now so you get a feel for what you might be faced with. But ultimately, if you know the exam objectives, it really doesn't matter how they ask the question. You should be able to answer it. That's very easy for me to say because we're not sitting in front of the exam right now with the anxieties and the time and the clock is counting and all those other things. But that kind of is the idea you should put in your head. Like, if I know the exam objectives and I can explain these exam objectives to anybody bullet by bullet, then I should be able to answer those regardless of how they ask them.
Great. Yeah, that's great, Professor Messer. I thank you again for everything that you do. You come very highly recommended, as your previous callers have said. And I, too, follow you. Just was on the study chat, got your email, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much, man. God bless you.
Best of luck, Eric. That's one of those things, though, that is incredibly frustrating. I've told this story before. When I was just starting out as a systems engineer, they wanted me to get a series of certifications on, well, this will date me, Ethernet, token ring, FIDI, and LAN cabling. All right, 2 of those things are still around anyway. And I did great on the token ring. I did great on the FIDI. I did great on the Ethernet. But I failed the LAN cabling. And I studied some more and failed it again. And had to take it the 3rd time, and I squeaked through the 3rd time. I did not do great the 3rd time, but I passed it the 3rd time through. It is incredibly frustrating to go through that. I'd already been working in the industry for years. I have been cabling for years. But it's one of those things where if you don't go into the details of an operating system, you're just using the operating system, you're kind of getting this high-level view. And then suddenly you start learning the certification. You realize, whoa, there was a lot of this. I had no idea what was really going on underneath. I was just doing the things to make it work. And so that was a similar thing with cabling. I was making the cables work. Everything was working. We're plugging it in. Everything, we were up. No, there was a lot more to it that suddenly I had to learn. But you don't fail until you stop. So I don't feel like a failure. I feel like I was succeeded. I feel like I passed. So that's a success. There was those two other things that I didn't do so well on before I finally succeeded, but I would not call those failures. And neither should you, Eric. You should continue through and pass those exams. Then you look back and like, wow, that was ridiculous. Let's keep this thing moving. Back to the phone lines. 617. Hi, caller. Thanks for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Vincent. I'm calling from Massachusetts, and I really appreciate you taking my call.
Hey, Vincent. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, so I actually found that last segment pretty helpful because I'm on the same boat. I took the 1002 exam, came up short, and so it's like I've been like taking because like I did the Cybex book for like my training where they divide it first half 1001, second half 1002. I decided to go through the take the 1002 stuff because that was just more of a more recency seasons, just more fresh in my memory. So it has. So based on that, how do you recommend studying if you're taking the 1002 first of the two exams?
I think a lot of people do that too. If I had to do it over again, I would probably do it that way. People often ask me, which one's harder? Is the 1001 harder? Is the 1002 harder? And I think the difficulty level of both of those exams, I think is pretty much the same. I think the difficulty level of the 1001 and the difficulty level of 1002 are pretty par with each other. But our experience in the industry probably has us leaning one way or the other with our own personal knowledge of what we're working with. And I think a lot of people, probably more people, are more comfortable with the operating system side of things because that's what they use every day. They log into Windows, they start up, they can go into control panel right now. They can look at all the control panel settings. They can look at the administrative tools. It's the same user interface they're accustomed to. It's something they use a lot, and maybe they're even in the industry already and they manage workstations, and they may have never pulled open apart a computer case to see what's inside of it because they've never needed to. They've never done a RAM upgrade. They've never done a storage upgrade. They've never replaced a motherboard because they didn't need to. That's not where there is. There's another group of people that are the reverse. Maybe they're field technicians. All they've ever done is replace hardware. They have worked and made sure that they know how to upgrade the memory. They've done CPU. They built their own PC. You know, they're very good with the hardware side of things, but they just haven't spent a lot of time in Windows. They can get it running. They can start up whatever app they need to start, but they have no idea what's really going on in the Windows environment. So for those two people, for the first group of people, the 1002 is going to be the better exam for them to start with. For the second group, the 1001 is probably going to be a better exam for them to start with. Which one's easier is going to be really up to them and what their previous experience happened to be. There are a lot of people I talk to that start on the 1002, and that's a perfectly reasonable place to start, I think. And if you're planning to do that as well, why wouldn't you? If that feels like a better place where you kind of need to lean that direction, then I absolutely agree that's where you should lean. There's very little overlap between the 1001 and the 1002. So if you can start with the 1002, learn everything you need to learn, understand all of the exam objectives, take the exam, pass it, you can put that aside, and now you can focus on the 1001 objectives, and you're going to find there's not a lot of overlap there.
Okay, right, that's very helpful. And I actually am part of the former group in that regard, and that was actually part of that was the other reason other than recency that I decided to do the 1002 first. And this is also a follow-up to your previous caller, like in terms of like community colleges that possibly teach A+ work. Like I have a bachelor's degree, and I actually got an associate's degree from a community college.
Me too.
So I just want to get more specifics on that. Are the A+ like courses at community colleges degree programs, or are they just individual classes like 9 to 12 weeks?
The ones that I have seen at most community colleges, and this is different, of course, wherever you go, because it's different in every different area that you might find, but at least the ones in my particular geography in the Southeast United States that I've looked at, they have been individual courses that might have kind of a technology focus. There might be a 2-year AA with a technology focus, but at least in Florida, these AA degrees that you would get are really generalized degrees, general AA, Associates of Arts degrees that you would earn at a community college. They're not, very rarely, although you might find it, there are some community colleges that do offer 4-year degrees. I haven't seen a lot of them offer IT 4-year degrees. It's usually been in nursing or healthcare or something along those lines, but nothing really on the technical side yet. It's almost always been a one-off.
Well, I would prefer like individual classes instead of like going through like a year's program, because I want to get trained for the A+ before like the exam updates. So I would be like interested in individual like 9 to 12 week classes and not a degree program like at this point.
I've almost always seen it that way.
So also like part of like solution to this, I actually recently just bought a physical, within this past hour actually, I just bought a physical copy of your practice exam.
Oh, thank you.
Even though I own the PDF file, because so how else, and I think you did address this for the other caller, but I may have like missed it. Like other than the like your practice exams, like how else would you like prepare for performance-based questions? Well, I'm trying to sort. What other ways would you suggest to prepare for the performance-based questions on the exam?
It's so tough because it's a moving target. As soon as we sort of understand, based on what information people have given when they've come out of the exam that probably should not have given this information, we sort of hear bits and pieces of, I had a question that asked about this. I had a question that asked about that. I had a question that, as soon as we understand what they're asking today, they change all the questions. So you can't study a question with this answer and know that when you walk into the exam, it's going to be one of these 5 things that you're going to get. It just doesn't work that way, because as soon as you figure out here's what they're asking, they end up asking something. They change all the questions. They're all brand new. They don't change the topics. The exam objectives are the same. They just change the questions that they're asking. And I noticed they're doing this recently where they're sort of mixing up difficulty levels. They're mixing up the style of questions. They're changing some of these around. But a lot of the questions still remain matching questions, putting things in order from highest to lowest, or putting things in order of how you would do it. They're just making it much more involved on the screen with drag and drops, but it's still a matching question. Or they're doing it with pull-down menus, but it's really still a matching question. I think that my comment to the other caller is probably the best advice I can give, which is, as long as you understand the topics in the exam objectives, it doesn't matter how they ask it. I'll take, for example, one that we sort of did today on the study group was about the malware removal process. And if you look at the exam objectives, there's a step 1, a step 2, a step 3, a step 4, a step 5, a step 6. So they take you through these steps of removing malware. And if you understand those 6 steps or 7 steps, it doesn't matter how they ask it, whether it's in a multiple choice-based question, a fill-in-the-blank question, a drag-and-drop question, or a matching question. You can put this in order. You can put it in the right order. You know what's first, you know what's second, you know what's third. So that's a very good example of, as long as you know the topics, they can ask it however they'd like. And it can be a performance-based question as well, and you'll be ready for it, because Just be ready for dragging and dropping or moving or doing those types of things. I think as long as you know it's coming, as long as you know it's not going to be multiple choice, I think that's part of it. Maybe for most of us, it's just fear of the unknown. Whoa, it's not a multiple choice. I can choose A, B, C, or D. I'm really concerned about them asking this in some other way. Well, don't be concerned, because they're just going to ask you to put it into a format that you're already comfortable with. As long as you know what the topic is about, you're going to do fine.
Yeah, so I think I've pretty much taken this for granted when I've done like practice exams and even on exam day, the countdown to the for the exam and all that kind of did rush me along with the anxiety on exam day.
Yeah.
And kind of like, because one of the questions, like, because the two performance-based questions I got, like the three performance-based questions I got when I took the exam a month ago, like one was a help desk call where you pretty much like I do customer service, and then the other was like queues at a help desk, and the other was a disk management like partitioning a disk and all that.
Okay.
And so I did get anxious, and I've done like certification blaster exams. I think the performance-based questions on those are the same as the exam. Like, you have to do it a specific way, or else the screen doesn't advance and you're stuck where you are, and all that. And so, well, I think that, so. And also, this may be my final one if I come up with like, I've taken a variety of practice exams, and they grade it the same way as the real exam, like labeling domains and subdomains where you get one or more questions wrong. And I'm having a tough time figuring out where exactly am I weak, because it's like I get the same score, like a lot of high 60s, occasionally a low 70s score and all that, other than the Cybex book, because the Cybex questions are really the only questions where I've mastered, where I get in the 90s and all that, because it's, that's like textbook I've been studying the most.
Right.
So I'm having a tough time figuring out where exactly I'm weak, because it's like I get the same score, but the domains and subdomains are different in terms of like, you need to work on this, you need to work on that. So it's really hard to filter, and it kind of sort of gives like a indicator that I'm basically weak on everything, because I see like every
right.
subdomain I see every subdomain like on a variety of exams I take. So
right.
I'm having like I kind of like sort of like make my own assessments, like, hey, I may be weak on networking. That's kind of how I feel I get the most wrong, and I have the least in like computer hardware, I have the least experience working with routers and networks and all that. So that's jargon I'm like not as familiar with, because in my everyday life, I haven't really had to deal with it, because I haven't been responsible for it. So how do you recommend figuring out where your weak spots are based on what I described?
Well, I think you're going to have to be really more focused on what you're getting right and what you're getting wrong to be able to interpret statistically what specific domain and subdomain you would need more help on. You would have to take thousands of questions and be able to compile all of those things together, because at some point you're going to get something wrong in every single domain. Statistically, you're going to get one wrong. But just because you got one wrong in a domain doesn't necessarily mean you're really weak in that domain. It just means you missed that particular topic from the domain. So I would say be more focused with the things you're getting wrong. If you get a question wrong, start breaking apart that question. What was the topic of the question? What were they really asking for? What was the right response? And perhaps even more importantly, what did I answer and why did I answer that? And only break down that topic. That's one topic out of thousands that are in the exam objectives. Break out that single topic and understand that specific thing. Then you're done with that topic. You now got that one. You understand the topic. You've now understood why you got it wrong. And now you can go to the next thing. I think ultimately those are the things that are going to help you the most, is getting more focused feedback rather than a generalized, where should I spend my time? Because you already know where you need to spend your time. You already know networking is weak. You already know hardware is weak. You already know that. So don't worry about trying to create a statistical inference from your practice exams. You should instead just focus on each individual question. Am I getting it right or am I getting it wrong? And why didn't I get that one right? And at least that topic now gets filed away. And if that ever comes up again, now we know the answer. Same thing today. If anybody ever has a PII question or everybody gets a GDPR question, you should be able to get it right now because most of us got it wrong today. The ones you get wrong are much more valuable to you than the ones you get right. The ones you get right, you already knew it. The ones you get wrong are going to help you. So make sure they're able to help you. Spend the time on those. Spend the extra time on the ones you get wrong, just so that you will get them right on the exam.
Okay. So, and basically like a follow-up for the performance-based questions, I'm going to definitely use your practice exams, which I feel like there's a lot of material there in terms of simulating the real exam. So other than, practice exams, lab manuals, what do you recommend getting to get specific hands-on exercises and experience for the 1002, which is what I'm taking right now, and I've decided to take first?
There's a few places to go. There are some labs you can purchase that are third-party labs. There's some on Amazon. There's some I recommend on my site for labs. I also, since this is kind of a Windows sort of situation, there are free Windows VMs. If people have not seen those before, if you go to modern.ie, and you may be familiar with this already, Vincent, but for those that are not, modern.ie is a Microsoft website that is designed for developers that are building things in a browser in the Windows environment. But on this site is a tools pull-down menu, and there's an option under there for virtual machines. They will provide for you Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10 as pre-built virtual machines. So if you're somebody who's trying to figure out, they're asking me questions about Windows 7, but I don't have Windows 7. Well, now you can download Windows 7. You can download Windows 8.1. You can download Windows 10 if you don't have it. If you're running on a Mac like I am, you can download Windows 10 and run it right now. Those are ready-to-go virtual machines that you can use, full-blown Windows. They run for 90 days. They are valid to use in your lab as long as you are not using it as a production system, and we would not be. These are for our training purposes. They are perfectly legitimate, and you're licensed to use them. They are all on the Microsoft website, the website that will get you there, modern.ie. And that's a great place to go to get some free labs, if you will. And you can start stepping through. You mentioned things like disk administration. So go load up a VM, go into disk administration. You can't break anything at that point. It's a VM. And if you do break it, you just reload it. You go back to a previous config, and you can run with that as well. So that's what I would recommend, is maybe use some of those tools that are available to you for free.
Interesting. And I've gotten suggestions of like volunteering to get hands-on lab experience. Where do you know where I can volunteer and I don't want it to be like haphazard where I'm just observing. I'm observing someone else. But where can I volunteer where I actually do, the stuff required for the A+ exams, and at this point, particularly 1002?
Well, I don't know that volunteering would be the best way to get knowledge for an exam. That seems a little bit more involved and perhaps not the best use of the person who's needing your volunteer time. Hopefully they're having someone come in to volunteer who is already familiar with the thing that they will be doing. You would not be using a volunteer opportunity as something to help you understand how to perform these functions in an actual environment. Now, if you want to volunteer to be a good person, that's different. And maybe even have somebody bring you along and you can learn as you go. But perhaps not the best way to train for an exam is to volunteer. Maybe if you were trying to get some practical experience so that you could get a job, then maybe you would volunteer. I would not necessarily recommend that as a study tool.
Okay, I appreciate it. And I like pass up a lunch to Buffalo Wild Wings and make this like live stream. So I really appreciate you taking the call, and it's very helpful, and I feel better now.
Best of luck, Vincent. I appreciate the call.
You too. Goodbye.
I don't know which one would have been better, though. I'm almost thinking Buffalo Wild Wings would have been better right now. That's just me, but then we wouldn't have a live stream. Sounds pretty good, though. Let's go back to the phone call, 785 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name is Michael. I'm from Kansas.
Hey, Michael. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
I just want to say, first off, thank you. I used you back in, I'd say 2010 to pass my A+ and my Network Plus.
Wow, don't tell people that.
I know. I'm aging myself a little bit. They actually have expired. I'm looking to go into Security Plus. Would it be best to recertify first on the A+ and Network Plus, or just go for the Security Plus?
It's one of those situations where it kind of depends on what you are doing with these. Is there a particular reason you're getting the certifications or getting new versions of these certifications now?
I'm looking to get in the field, and I'm trying to get. I'm going to get my bachelor's degree. I actually have like 3 months left.
Right.
And I'll be graduating with a cybersecurity and information assurance. I've done an internship already, so that helped me out a little bit. But I'm looking to just get a little spice up a little bit, get more certifications. I have them, but when they ask about it, I say, well, they're expired.
Right.
I don't want to say they're expired.
And they don't want you to have an expired one along those lines, too. I would kind of recommend the same thing I recommend in my video for how to get a job in IT with no experience, which is there's got to be a driving reason to earn these credentials that somebody is going to appreciate. And now if you're doing it just for yourself, then that's different. You can choose it and go through the process because it's your own personal development that you're doing. But for the vast majority of people that are looking to get these certifications, there's a purpose for doing it. There's a means to this end. And most of the time, that's because they either want to get a job or they want to get a better job. That's the primary focus, I think, for most of us. So the question is, what are employers looking for in your area? Do they want you to have an A+? Do they want you to have a Network Plus? Are they looking for Security Plus? Have you made a list of all these jobs that are open that you might be qualified for and made a list of what their requirements are? Because we might be able to learn more from sort of a broad scope of what the employers in your area might want.
In my area particularly, it's kind of a really bad area for tech. I have to get a really good tech job, I have to do like an hour-and-a-half drive to a bigger city. I live in a big city, but it's not a tech hub like, Austin, Texas, California, and other places.
Right.
They are asking for, most places are hiring an A+ Network Plus certification on your application.
Okay. That almost answers our question for us. Should you get Security Plus? Well, are they asking for Security Plus? If they're not, then that sort of redirects us towards what people are wanting. Because ultimately, we need to get our foot in the door, at least for that first job or from that first tech job perspective, we need to get there. Now, as long as you get in the door, you now will suddenly have many other options available. And I think a lot of people want to deal with the other options that are available before they ever get their first job. And it's really backwards. What will get you in the door? And if getting in the door is an A+, then that's pretty well written then. That's exactly where you should be focusing your efforts. And if nobody's asking for Security Plus, as much as you might want a Security Plus, as much as you might think it will help you to have a Security Plus, that doesn't matter. What really matters is what the employer would like you to have, and that probably would set your direction pretty well.
There's some jobs like for like the banks and other places that are asking for Security Plus or a bachelor's degree, but like a help desk, which is they pretty much want A+ Network Plus, which is the groundwork, entry-level spot.
And I would say there's probably many more jobs that are looking for A+ Network Plus than those that are looking for Security Plus. And as it turns out, the banks also probably would like you to have an A+ Network Plus as well, along with the Security Plus. So if you're going to go with the odds, A+ Network Plus is probably going to be your best bet. It's more of a numbers game than it is technically what is the right way for me to go from a long-term perspective of my career. We're not even at that point yet. We're just trying to get that first job. So A+ Network Plus sounds like a pretty good line of attack to me.
Okay. Thank you.
Sounds good. Good. Best of luck, Michael.
Thank you.
I appreciate that call. That's one where if you're, I get a question all the time. It comes in constantly, almost every day, which is, what do I get now? Maybe what do I get first? And the other question I get is, I've got this, I got my Security Plus. What do I get next? Like, I have no idea. I don't have enough information to be able to answer that. That's a much longer conversation. What are you trying to do? Where are you trying to go? What are people asking for? We have to do a little legwork. I mentioned in my video how to get a job in IT with no experience. And I know I keep referring to this, but I created the video because I keep answering these questions in the study group, and I just don't have enough time to really answer it. That's a 30-minute video, and I talk about that strategy of create a spreadsheet, list out every job in your area, go to Indeed, go to Dice, go to the company's websites directly, look at the job postings, and find out what they're asking for. Do they want a formal degree? What kind of formal degree? Do they want certifications? Which certifications? Do they want other knowledge? What other knowledge? Document all of it. Create a huge spreadsheet of these things. You should be doing all of this intel of everything in your area. You should be the most knowledgeable person of every job opening in your area that applies to you than anyone else. And you should absolutely be able to look at all that and say, wow, everybody's asking for an A+. I should probably get my A+. Wow, nobody's asking for an A+. I should probably go get what they're asking for. So that should tell you where you should go. It should give you an absolute layout of what's happening there, but it's not the only thing. There's, of course, those 4 things I mentioned. You need to have a formal degree. You need to have that certification. You need to have some practical experience. You need to know someone who works there. And that video explains how you should get all 4 of those. Back to phone lines. 206 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Seattle, Washington.
Welcome. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Hey, so first of all, I just want to say thank you. I'm a huge fan of your work, and I'm a new father as of about a year ago.
Nice.
So one of the things is my cousin told me about getting an IT job because he just served 20 years in the military, and he retired. And so I'm looking to increase my skill set, and one of them was getting the Security Plus. And he showed me that there was ways to make a lot more money and get the experience. And I'm thinking, so what I'm doing is reading the book all the way through, and then going back to study all the whatever questions and do the online practice. Would that be the best method to try to give a fair shot in completing the performance base, or what do you recommend?
My recommendation is always 4 things when it comes to studying for these exams. And your cousin's absolutely right. IT is probably the area, probably more than any other vertical market. I mean, like, you can look at healthcare, manufacturing, transportation, IT, anything along these lines. I think the most flexibility and the thing that gives people the most upward mobility right now, and it has been for the longest time, is IT. So you're in the right place to be able to find those things. But I always recommend a combination of 4 different things to really optimize your ability on this exam. And we're going to look at this from the perspective of just the A+ certification. So let's take the recommended study resources that I have on my site, because this summarizes it quite nicely. If I can get to this page, there we go. So here on my site, there's a study resources for the A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. Right at the bottom are study recommendations. on my main menus. For A+, I always say you should get some videos. There's videos on my site, but you can use any good videos to watch what's going on. I have course notes that go with mine. So I try to build in some additional study materials more than just watching videos. Here's some notes that you can use to go along with the videos. And I can't emphasize enough the books. Being able to have some, at least one, but perhaps two books. Find some that make sense for what you're doing. You mentioned having some of those now and going through the books and taking their questions. There are also in many of these books great labs that they will have you step through. They'll have you go to Windows, start up the control panel, go to the administrative tools, launch this utility, look at the information that's there. A lot of these books have those in them as well. I give some samples of 4 that are pretty good on my site, but there's more out there. And I always recommend you go to Amazon, click the link on Amazon that allows you to read the book, because you can read maybe the first chapter of the book and see if it's a good book for you. Just because somebody else says it's a good book for them doesn't mean it's a good book for you. Every book's a little different and works better for different people. So read through those good books. I do tell people to get plenty of hands-on. So there are labs you can buy. There are labs you can read through in these books. There are third-party labs you can get on Amazon. There's labs you can get from my site. Find a way to get as much stick time, as much hands-on time on the keyboard as possible, because then when somebody brings this up, when they say you have to fix this disk problem, you have to resolve this issue with the user's account, you have to fix this problem relating to permissions. If you've never fixed a problem with permissions, it's much more difficult than if you've already gone into the NTFS settings, you've already seen all the permissions, you've already removed some permissions and add some permissions, you've already done all the work. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, I've done this before. Let's just step through it on the screen here and do it again. I think the hands-on is an important part of it. And lastly, the Q&A is important. Getting as much high-quality questions and answers and really evaluating how well you do with the questions and answers is an important part of this too. Those are my 4 elements for success, that if you are planning to take your exam, make sure you have all 4 of those. That's what would give you the best chance of passing the exam.
Awesome. And then with your Q&A, because I know for a fact that portion of it is what is the most uncomfortable, because Q&A, depending on what I'm studying, because the whole book relatively plans it out for you, what you're supposed to know. And my confusion sometimes comes from being slightly overwhelmed by the material, because it can be a lot. And so, with that being said, is that trying to understand what are the most important things. So I know that Q&A is one of them. And so basically having a thorough knowledge of deciphering and what protocols are in place. And don't get me wrong, like it could be a lot, but I know it's well worth it in the end for what my goals are. But yeah. Oh, yeah.
So 4,000.
I think if you were going to work through Q&A as much as you can, it makes sense. And I think a lot of people run into this as well, is that the questions and the way that they're asked on the A+ exam is very different than other exams you might run into. And it's very different than some of the practice questions on the internet. I've seen practice questions that ask things like, what does PII stand for? That you're never going to get a question like that on the exam. The exam has nothing to do with trivia, has nothing to do with definitions and answering the definition. It is more of a question that's giving you a scenario, and then you have to resolve the scenario. So I highly recommend, and I mentioned this, not just getting Q&A, but getting very high quality Q&A that at least has a similar type of style to what you might find on the exam. I think that's very important so that you're not thrown when you start seeing these things pop up on the exam. There is a value to the trivial type questions, at least at the beginning, so that you do understand, oh, PII, that's personally identifiable information. That's something like a name or address or phone number. Right. There's an importance to know that, but you're not going to get a question like that on the exam.
No. Okay. And I just figured it was, I said, that's way too easy.
Yeah.
I want to know trivial Q&A. What scenario would I have to figure out, especially like reading the last sentence will better help to pick up what's really going on with Bart or Maggie, that scenario. And so, but once again, I don't never get a call through to you because I always see your videos. And I just want to, give some pointers because I know around February is when I'm taking my test. And I'll be more than ready because around March, when they're switching it to the 601, and I'm definitely passing the 501.
I think you got the right idea. I think you've got the right strategy. I think you've got the right perspective of what you need to do. Now it's just a matter of going out and executing on it. Best of luck.
Thank you, Professor Messer.
I appreciate the call.
Day.
Yeah, you too. It's one of those scenarios where it's never any one thing. It's always different things put together. And I mentioned that earlier, is that you really do have to see it, read it, do it, and then get some Q&A on it, be asked about it. Each one of those things, even if it's exactly the same content, each one of those things really teaches you differently. It really presents the information in a different way. And I think it gets stuck in your brain. It gets registered in a different way. So that's what I would recommend too, is that if you're just reading a book, you're kind of missing it. If you're just doing hands-on, then you're missing other parts as well. If you're only watching the videos, then you're missing other parts as well. Always combine these things together, and I think you're on the right track. That's the best thing to do. Well, that takes us to the end of this particular study group. I want to thank you for being here in our first hour for the Q&A that I get to ask, and I'm glad you stuck around for the second, or in this case, third hour, so that I can ask you questions as well. We do one of these study groups at least once a month for the different exams. We have two next week, one on Network Plus on Tuesday and one on Security Plus Thursday. We'd love to have you come back for those as well. We'll also have the first hour Q&A, and I will open up the phone lines again and take questions from the chat room. We'd love to have you call in for that as well. Thank you for joining us this time. We will see you next time on the Professor Messer A+ Study Group. Thanks, everyone.